So welcome everyone to the 2025 Robot Party Game Jam Post-Mortems. I appreciate everyone signing up and showing up to watch especially. So before we begin, I'll have to go over some quote-unquote some ground rules. This post-mortem is being recorded and will include chat. So don't say anything that might incriminate yourself. Just putting it out there. If you're giving a presentation, be sure you're using the Discord app, not the web browser. The web browser does not work, as we experienced many times in the past. Hello, Internet. Okay, with a few exceptions, every presentation is about 15 minutes max. I will let you know when you have a minute left, but if you want me to give you other time prompts, like maybe at 10 minutes or so, just let me know when you get on stage and I will do that for you. Finally, the way this works is when it's your time to present, I will invite you up onto the stage. I'll mute myself, and then from there, you'll have control over sharing your screen. When your presentation is over, you have to manually leave the stage. Otherwise, it's difficult for us to proceed. I don't think we can manually kick you off the stage. So let's try not to abuse that power. So anyway, with that out of the way, let us begin the postmortems. And very first on the schedule, we have Gretchen the Wretched in Super Sludge Clash, a Skremplet adventure with Decal Futures, Magnetic Memory, and Ujak. So let me, yeah, and maybe we'll do that next year. So let me find you guys. I will invite you to speak. Invite the entire team to speak. And who are we missing? Magnetic Memory. There you are. Invite to speak. So I should see you guys up here. Cool. Well, you're here now. You guys want to check your mics, make sure everything's working okay?
Yes. Testing.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Cool. So whenever you guys are ready, you have 20 minutes allotted to you. So do you want me to give you any indications, like when you have, like 1 minute left or something?
Sure.
Cool. All right, take over. I'm going to mute myself, and the stage is yours.
Great. Magnetic, do you want to go first and share the page?
I thought you were going to go first, but I can.
I can go first.
Okay.
Maybe share the page first will be a good intro, or I can just do a quick
Okay.
little, hi everyone, we're the team who made Super Sludge Clash. I was the main dev of it, but Mags here was our writer, and Dana did a good portion of the art, and they wanted to share a lot of that kind of stuff, since that is, I think, what turned out the most interesting in our project was more of the story and art and presentation element. So I was going to let them handle it today. So Mags, take it away.
Cool. Thank you. So to be clear, the whole project was really cool, and it was so awesome working with the whole team. Everyone was amazing. And yeah, this is our product page, which doesn't really matter because it doesn't even show up when you're voting. But I used to be a brand manager, and I used to make these all the time, so I couldn't help myself. And Dana graciously added putting all those the pictures of the headers together for this, and I think it looks really cool. I'm really proud of it. But yeah, give it back over to Dana to talk about other stuff.
Sorry, my cat was in the sink and I had to chase him out. Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed what you had said. Anyway, so hello. It's been a day. My cat's been a wild scamp. Actually, could you still share the screen page?
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm a data scientist and a developer, and I want to start out with what I really liked about the project was that everyone was very much into it, and it felt very cohesive and collaborative. And with a lot of team projects, like I've done like 20 game jams or something, and with a lot of the projects that kind of failed in the jam space for me, that was because the team didn't have like they just wanted to compromise instead of like collaborate and do a project where it felt like we were all building something. And I really liked, as exemplified kind of like in the page that Mag and I did, how we came together and like built something that's like, for me, really visually appealing in a portfolio, but also as like a developer, this felt like a great project that had like an actual end date, because in a lot of dev work, just in general, things can always have like a non-end date, which is kind of frustrating. And I did all the art pretty much for this except for the humans, which was Learned Fingers. And I loved how our art styles really meshed well together. And anyway, so I do a lot of cartoon art. I love cartoon games. I like making horror games, cozy games, and this was like such a nice fit for that. And I was really excited that Wujek was like, yeah, do the art this year, Dana. So this is Nickelodeon art style, which doesn't really have a distinct set of rules or parameters unlike other kinds of art styles. It's just iconic to like the animation television network Nickelodeon, even though this kind of art could be seen on other networks with indie studios. So it's just like simple shapes, lines, and then really exaggerated cartoony noodle arms or like cheeks puffed out and like rounded teeth, for example. And I pulled a lot of inspiration from shows like Rocko's Modern Life, Cat Dog, Rugrats, Dexter's Laboratory, SpongeBob. So while the art originated in the 90s, you can still see it today in a lot of cartoons, and it's been very influential in the industry. And then I sampled pretty much all colors from All Real Monsters. So when I was making the miniatures, for example, like Wujek I know is very much into like JRPGs and more kind of strategy games. Unlike me, I'm more into like RPGs or horror games. So this was really fun too, because it made me think about like actually making, part of the premise was we wanted to make it seem like a kid would actually play this with miniatures, cards, and you could see in the mini games, we ended up making almost as if a kid would like take a sheet of paper and then like draw some doodles on it to be like, here's our battlefield or whatever for our mini games. And it really felt like in a digital space we did that, which I thought was so much fun. And I liked how I probably made like 300, 400 assets. And I love how it all meshed together. And what else did I want to say? There's real things I really liked. And my favorite part was doing the cards. I really had a lot of fun, different art styles. And I want to put in chat. I kind of compiled a couple doodles I didn't end up putting in the game. But like, here's an example of some sketches I did for what I wanted to do with the cards. Something that I felt was really challenging art direction wise was to try to stick to the jam story. Unlike other jams, like the Robot Party jam is really weird in the sense that, it dictates, here's the story, here's the plot you have to have for your game. A lot of other game jams are, it's thematic. It's like, it's a Halloween, it's a horror, it's a cozy, it's a RPG type of game you have to make. It has to be this length of time. And the developers who make the game then can make up the whole story. They can make up the characters. So this was challenging. We had to really stick to the Skremplets. But I also really wanted to like redesign them. I didn't want to use someone else's art or IP or concept of it, since we didn't have a lot of flexibility and freedom in like the story creation and direction of it per se. And so I pulled a lot, like you'll see with Gretchen, who ended up making kind of like the titular character, from these like really exaggerated cartoony expressions. And I wanted to make them like gross and creepy. And a lot of the art personally that I'm directed towards in like the Nickelodeon theme are like animals. So I didn't want to make like human things. And you'll see like even in my doodles, like I try to make like simplified animal shapes. Like I have an otter, a moose, kind of like a gator thing, and then like a duck. So that was really fun. I felt some of the designs, like with, I want to say their name was Orc, the one who sang, like in Nickelodeon art style, how I'm doing it, I don't do hair. Like the art doesn't have hair per se. So that was challenging to try to make that fit when it didn't necessarily match the art style. And I felt a lot more enjoyment in just having to do a lot of variety in the art assets. So like the tile set, for example, me and Wojak redid it like 9 to 10 times, trying to get the lines to match up. So tile sets, if you don't know, it's like the walls, the floor. A lot of the trash bags and trash containers were easier because we could place them wherever as individual image files, but the tile set was very challenging trying to get, the art I wanted in terms of like what the floor design should be, kind of like gross and trashy, but like wooden floor kind of. But then the lines literally had to match up. So that was also challenging because a lot of the art is meant to be goopy and messy and imperfect. And yet for a tile set, you kind of need it to be a bit more perfect and linear. So that's all I have off the top of my head right now. And I'm still having to eyeball a cat in the sink. I think unless, Wujak and Mag have anything else to say, I think we're open for questions.
Yeah, I have a few things real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks. So to reiterate, I loved working with this team. It was so much fun. I only joined this community, like the Discord, and started watching streams earlier this year. So I kept on hearing about the game jam all year, and I knew I definitely wanted to participate. So as soon as I saw Wujak posted looking for a writer, I immediately DM'd her. And yeah, this was so much fun. And she already had like the premise for the game and everything planned out. So I just needed to put in a story in between, like all the game elements. So I made character sheets first using Learn Fingers sketches so that Wujak can do casting. And all the voice actors were amazing. Like I thought they were all professional voice actors from how talented they were. It was so good. And they nailed their lines. And I got like a weird enjoyment out of hearing them read my lines, and it added so much life into the whole game. So that was a really cool experience. And then, is this still sharing my Switch
we see
pages?
it.
Cool. So yeah, this is where we filled in like all the dialogue and everything, and there's a lot of it. Originally we had more, but we needed to cut back to fit within the 25-minute time. I wanted to do more clues to the Earth Hands Council being involved, but that didn't end up fitting. So we just have a few things. So in hindsight, I wish that I had thought to make like a guide for Kyle to use as he was playing so we can get more of the story. So like people that were watching the stream and didn't play themselves could see that more. And so that we'd all be able to hear all the voice actors talk at least once because they're all really cool. So know that for next time. What else? I like how we did the names for the characters. So we just used like abbreviations of words that described each character, except for like the loser character, because all those words ended up sounding mean. So we just did red for their hair color. And then M is just me backwards. That's still pretty cool. And then for this was just like an outline I did that I originally scared Wujak with, saying I have like 3,000 words written down, but just because it's an outline. And then my original pitched ending was like too meta. It was like a live action scene that turned out that Earth Hands Council was actually really shady, but we ended up doing just a disclaimer screen, which was a lot easier, and it worked out better in the end, I think. And ability descriptions, these were really fun to write. To use like all the Goblic endowments and make them make sense into the game. That was really fun. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, this was so much fun and I loved working with everyone, and I need a new project now. So if anyone needs a writer or help with art, let me know. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, or Wujak, if you wanted to add anything, if she's still here.
Who knows? But you are well under time. You only have 12 minutes,
Hi.
so Oh, there you go. There
Okay. I can talk about. I thought I was on
Go for
stage this whole time. Okay. I apparently left at some point, but you said we have what 8 minutes left?
Yep.
Okay. I quickly wanted to talk about some of the challenges before we open it up to questions. Though, if anyone has any as they come up, feel free to share, and I will be happy to address them. But as cool as the voice acting stuff was, I think it was one of our biggest challenges of this project. My goal, any type of project I work on, is always to one up whatever I did previously, which is a little bit harder when you had a winning game jam game last year. So that desire is also pretty counter to Kyle's desire to always scope down and make sure people don't work too hard on everything. So it's kind of my personal inner drive counter to what the game jam's goal is. So I really wanted to do voice acting. It's something I had not attempted to work with before, and I have people in this community and people who are friends and stuff who are interested in that kind of thing. So I thought it would be really fun to include, but it turns out that makes it very limiting on the runtime of your game. As Max was saying, she kind of scared me with the early scripts, and I was doing like cold read throughs of like, hey, this is 20 minutes of red dialogue. I don't think we're going to be able to put a game in there. So um compromises there had to be made on the script. There had to be compromises after things had been recorded, which felt bad. Ickety here did an excellent job with Boy Howdy at the end with a really gasping and wheezing take that had to be sped up at the end for timing's sake. It runs at 1.2x speed instead of how it was originally intended in order to try to get things under the time limit. And it feels way worse to be like, actually, maybe things would feel smoother if we cut this dialogue because, well, we already had somebody working on and had recorded that dialogue. So um, I think a lot of like those time sacrifices were made more in gameplay. Like the amount of time that the events run had to be sped up a lot. And I think that maybe ended up hurting the understandability or playability. It gives players less time to figure out what the different Skremplets do, because that's kind of the main goal, right? It is an auto battler that you're betting on, and you're not supposed to fully understand how Skremplets works, because that's kind of what the prompt is, and you're supposed to figure out over time. It's like, oh, actually, you know, if they have Foozloos, then they're going to be good at the collect because he has a chance of spawning more units, and more units has more chances to pick up more stuff. So I should bet I'm going to lose against this person with Foozloos. But it's kind of hard to figure that stuff out in the amount of time allotted to it, but I think it shook out well enough that most people were able to play and figure it out and do well. One of my goals for that kind of confusing gameplay was that, like, if you understood, you would win every time, right? I played this game a million times in dev, and I can play through the whole thing betting correctly basically every time. I was pleasantly surprised that Kyle on stream was able to mostly bet correctly every time to keep things moving and really feel like the player learned things about the game, since that learning is the only real like gameplay progression. It's just personal knowledge and understanding of what these units and stuff do and how to play smart bets. But yeah, I wanted to give a big shout out to all of our talented voice actors. Max said that a lot of them seem professional. That was most people's first time doing voice work, including major roles like the main character. That was Gibbs's first time doing voice work of any kind at all. And I think she did a wonderful, excellent job. That's about it. Anyone got any questions? We'd be happy to answer them.
Uh,
Was there a trick to merging the look? Sorry.
I was going to say you should do exactly what you're doing is to repeat the question before you answer it, but you're way ahead of me.
Yeah, I'm a pro
You're a
streamer
pro.
chat reader. Was there a trick to merging the look of many old shows and games into one cohesive project, or did it all naturally together? So the way we have it worked with two artists is that Learned Fingers did all of the characters, so like the main character and the rivals and the bouncer and all of that, as well as the like cut-ins for when you play a card in the gameplay. Those were all done by Learned Fingers, and then Dana here did all of the rest of it, all of the like garbagey stuff and the monsters and all of that. So Part of the answer to that is that it wasn't supposed to be fully cohesive. The characters were supposed to stand out, right? Unlike a lot of the other games here, this does not take place in the Skremplets universe. This takes place in the real world playing the Skremplets board game, much like a Yu-Gi-Oh or a Beyblade game or whatever would be, right? It is not about the Skremplets individually. It is about the people who play that game. So we kind of did want there to be a discrepancy between like, Riv, the cool looking main rival character, and, Gretchen, the gross little garbage monster. So I think splitting the duties there made the point of non-cohesion easier to do since it was two different artists. And then Dana working on the rest of it, the rest of the parts that were supposed to be cohesive together, I think allowed us to really blend that together because she did an excellent job with it all.
Huh. Yeah, that's about it. And then my art style, it's just naturally meant to be like that. That's the joy of Nickelodeon style. It's merging a bunch of random, seemingly nonsensical things together because it's just the world simplified. It's looking at like couches and chairs and people as circles and blocks and things, which is just kind of like a fundamental art basic thing.
Anything else?
I got a question, or a statement,
Okay.
or something you maybe can elaborate on. Your game probably had the most repulsive representation of Boy Howdy of the entire game jam.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you held back or you wanted to push further. Any comments on that?
Funny
Jack is a
thing.
no blood. She wants no blood, no horror. So I had to just go for gross.
Yeah, last year, Dana here is a big horror person, a big scary, gross, whatever person, and I had to keep like talking her down from the ledge of like, no, we can't. It's the secret reveal is not that the barbecue food is people. They're not eating people. We're not doing that. Last year, as she was our writer, and this year, the first draft of our gross and bloated Boy Howdy, which we have to disrespect Boy Howdy. That's part of the prompt there. That was our way of doing it. The first draft was actually less gross. I was like, Dana, this is your year. This is your year, and you can do it. Make it as gross and cruddy and nasty and horrifying as you can do it. And so I think the final draft we ended up with was a very good representation of that, which wasn't gonna like up the age rating of the project, but was still pretty terrible. So excellent work, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. We got about 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks to everyone on the team for working. I know I can be sporadic and demanding, and that was definitely a big team to manage once we pull in all the voice actors and stuff, but everyone was great about getting their work done and in timely matters. And there was one request to all the voice actors on like 2 days before the thing to add the voices like in the wager picking screen, and they all got back to me so quickly, and I just am really thankful for the team that trusts me to work on this game and get it together, and it would not be anything that even existed without any of them. Yeah, shout out to the sound people too. Will, excellent music. Piper she brought on as a voice actor and decided to balance all of the audio herself because she just wanted to, and that was wonderful and a lot of work to take. So thank you to literally every person who worked on it.
Cool. All right.
And thank you, McRumples, for hosting.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that presentation. But now I must kick. Well, you have to kick yourselves off stage. I don't have that power.
Should we just right click leave stage?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Cool. All right. Thank you again. So next up, we have a presentation for USO 60. Let me try to find Jordan. There you are. Come on up.
Hey, hello.
Hey.
Hey, Mayor. Hey, everybody.
Go. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to let you go.
Sure, let me cast the screen. All right. Can everybody see it? Let me just double check. All right, cool. All right, hello everybody. My name is Jordan Smith. I am one half of the Quiet Men team. Usually, we would use these post-mortems to kind of talk about our expectations going into the project versus the reality of the game that we actually pumped out. But honestly, it's kind of a blur for me, right? So I figured instead I'd talk a little bit about the 2D effect that we worked on and to give the game, a more hand-drawn or sketchy look. So originally, I actually got the idea for this from last year's Game Jam. There was a 3D side-scrolling puzzle game that was labeled a development build because it wasn't quite finished. But after watching it, I thought, how cool would it be if you were playing what you thought was a hand-drawn two-dimensional game, only to hit like a dead end at the end, and the game to reveal it's actually 3D, and the way forward is to walk into the world rather than just like going side to side. And by the way, I think that that's like also proof that there's always value in your work. Like even if it's unfinished, it could still inspire others. That last game wasn't finished last year, but it did inspire me when I saw it, and I could definitely say that our game wouldn't exist at all like if that team didn't submit their project. So I'm glad they did. But yeah, so for a while I've been researching different non-physically rendering NPR techniques, and I've been trying to achieve a more 2D look with the 3D assets. I've been trying to do that for a while, so I figured that this would be like a good time to take that challenge. So today I want to talk a little bit about what I actually did. But don't worry, I'm not going to bore you like it's a math class. I'm just going to present some techniques that I used, but I'm not planning to dive into any nitty gritty details here. Okay, so yeah, let's begin. All right, so when we saw there was 61 Skremplets, we had the outrageous thought of making a game for each one of these Skremplets. And so, yeah, we often base our ideas off of some spin off of some other game's title, for better or for worse. So in this case, we were like, this would be our only chance to do something like UFO 50. Because when else would the game jam specify such like a large number of an exact number of anything? So we knew coding it was going to be hard enough. But we also knew that we didn't have that if we didn't have any plans for the visuals, then we might risk accidentally being too ambitious and just fall flat at the end. So we took some inspiration from the old Mario dev docs, where developers would draw the levels out by hand before handing them over to their art and development teams. For us, this would have allowed us to quickly make art assets with like some cohesive style, but it would also allow us to replicate a similar look for the 3D overworld. So I've been studying NPR techniques for a while, and I would say that what you're trying to do is destroy that perfectly computer generated look that gives away the fact that it's 3D. In my experience, the best way to do that is to switch the camera from perspective to orthographic mode. With perspective, you'd notice that the scene is rendered more like real life. So objects far away are way smaller than the objects that are closer up, even if it's the same object. And when walking around, you can see that the view you have of different objects shift, even if you don't really rotate the camera. So it would give it away. But in orthographic, the image is flattened a bit, and all objects appear to be the same size, regardless of how far away it is from you. And so they look the same regardless of how you move the camera, unless you rotate the camera, which is like, that's perfect for if you're trying to replicate that kind of two-dimensional looking style. So this would let me mimic how we would present it if it were actually hand-drawn. You would never take the time to change the size of every three from multiple angles. And so without orthographic, the effect would be given away immediately. The next step was to add a pencil-like overlay over the screen. So you could see it kind of there. This technique was actually kind of simple. I think the idea of it is to just distract the viewer. So like they will see the pencil marks over the screen, and they'll think it was actually drawn because that part was actually drawn, rather than if every model was just clean and pristine, then you'd suspect it was 3D. So after that, we had to move on to the line art generation. Now, to get lines drawn over objects in a 3D world automatically, we tend to use depth information, which will tell us how far each item is. And we would also use the normal information, which tends to tell us the shape of each object. Then we would apply what is known as the Sobel edge detection algorithm, which sounds scary, but it kind of is scary. But basically, what it is that it goes pixel by pixel, and it compares that pixel to all the other pixels around it that touch it. So you look at the pixels above and below, to its right and its left, and then diagonally adjacent, and it will say how different is this pixel's color to its neighbors. And if that difference is massive, then it knows that it needs to put a line there. And that's generally how it works. So I also included a snippet of the code right there so you could see that it might look complicated, but the whole algorithm fits into just a few lines of code right here. All right, so that would be the line art, and so this is how it ended up looking. So that's just we're about halfway there. Next is grids and hatching. So to replicate the Nintendo dev doc look, we added some graph paper lines to the overlay and some hatching to the shadows. That's typically how it would look if it were drawn in the diary. So we wanted to replicate that look, and I think it goes again just like the pencil outline. I think it helps to go to mimic that three-dimensional flat look, to kind of trick the brain a bit. All right. So the line stuff was mostly complete, but it still looked a bit too straight, a bit too perfect. So you can see on the left, people will notice that those lines are a little bit too perfect. So we needed to once again break up that perfection, which was also kind of easy. What we did was shift each pixel based on a random noise pattern so that it would look random. We used three these noise patterns. So you could see in my little wiggle algorithm down there, mixed together so that it'll be hard to see any repetition. Like if I did like a basic wave pattern, then you would kind of see that repeating over and over, and that does not look like somebody perfectly drew the line. So to make this subtle variation, we mixed three different noise patterns together. And we were almost done. But if you pause the game, it would look drawn, like it would look completely hand drawn to us. But as soon as we moved or turned the camera, that would like fall apart. So you can see on the left, because this is a screen effect, when the character moves from left to right, the grid lines move with the camera, the hatching moves a bunch, and the line variations are also moving. And that would give the effect away. What we wanted was for the effect on the right, where you can see that the grid lines are moving to the left when you move to the left, or counter to where you're moving, and the hatching stays in place. But this is a screen effect, so it's applied afterwards. It's a post-processing effect. So we needed to make it look no longer post or well processed. So this is actually the hardest part because we couldn't find any like literature on it at all. But in the end, what we did was we used the same depth information from before to figure out each pixel's location in the world, and then took the camera's rotation and position and drew the lines based on that instead. So this way, the effect was literally being painted onto the world as if it were a texture, and I only would repaint it if the player rotated the camera. That way, the world would look hand-drawn from any angle and would remain consistent as you ran around. All right, so here are the final results. a couple techniques and a filter that work together to make the game look less 3D and mathematically perfect and a lot more like a simple 2D sketch. But that's also the end of my presentation. So thanks a lot for listening, for watching. I'm glad I got to test out some of my research on this game, and I'm glad I got to share it all with you guys. If there's any questions, I'll gladly take them now, whether they're about the filter or about any other aspect of our game. I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, people were asking about what engine you were using.
Godot. Usually we would use Unreal Engine for the game jam, but we fell in love with Godot a little earlier this year because of how quickly it builds the game, and just how small the file size is. So we definitely switched to Godot for this project. All right. Decode Futures. What was your favorite part about making the game? So my brother and I, we split tasks. My brother handled all the 60 games, so he just kind of buried his head into that. And I handled making this shader and figuring out how to do that. I would say my favorite part is definitely the shader. That's all I did. And his favorite part was probably the final boss, because that technique was really cool. And it was kind of like a fun ending to like all of our hard work as well, because we got to put all the like a few of our favorite games, mashing them into one really cool boss. So I think that was our favorites. Shabello says, do we regret making 61 games? No. Actually, no, we don't. We made the 61 games just mostly for the novelty, and we were just super relieved that we were able to fit them all in. It was no mean feat, but we were glad we were able to get that done.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when the game switches from 2D to 3D, I think you could sense a collective gasp throughout all of chat. Was that did that meet your expectations?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Super satisfied by how that played out. I was very worried because I didn't get that much time to work on the visuals as I wanted. So it really just came together at the end, especially with, well, what I said before, where I had to kind of stick the lines onto the world. I couldn't figure out how to get that to work, and without that, it would have fallen apart. You could have tell that it was moving as the camera moved, and even if you didn't know if it was 2D or drawn or whatnot, at least you would have seen that some part was being generated on the fly. So I knew, like, I only have one chance at this, because if I try to do it again next year, everybody would have suspicion. So I'm so glad that it worked out at the end, and everybody's reactions was exactly what I had hoped for. And I'm seeing everybody's reaction in the chat as well. Thanks for your kind words, and I'm glad I was able to surprise a few of you.
There's about a minute left, but Jack, last chance.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll just I'll briefly also just mention how we did the 60 games, just real quick. We knew from the beginning it was going to be tough, but the two things we wanted to accomplish was this 2D, 3D effect, and my brother, what he wanted to accomplish was the 60 games. He was really adamant about that. So what we did to make sure it kind of worked was we took every Skremplet we could find. I think it was like 134 of them from chat suggestions. And we looked at their goblet endowments, and we tried to figure out how many of these could be grouped together, and how many of these could bounce off of each other. And that was like a whole spreadsheet, just moving Skremplets from top to bottom, and then trying to figure out, all right, what kind of game can we make for these? and then we made a whole bunch of different games and templates, and we tried to reuse as many parts of it as possible, um, over and over again, just so that we could like add complexity without burning ourselves out. So I would say, yeah, that was really fun, and we're glad it worked out.
Cool. Yeah, I just reiterate, 61 games is just insane to think about.
Yeah, it is. Um, and yeah, so really glad all of these things worked out.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so very much. Great
Sure
job.
thing.
It's great how you can come in here with the technical presentation and everyone's still just like, you know, on the edge of their seat. Well, at least I was. I thought that was fascinating.
Awesome. Yeah, I was really worried not to bore anybody,
Oh,
especially with all the lines of code and stuff. Nice.
if anything, you scare people, and that's impressive in itself.
Okay, I'll take it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll ask you to leave the stage.
Will do. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Cool. So next up, we have Skremplet's Trash Battle presented by Vincent. Come on up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, when I launched the app, it was using the wrong speakers for some reason, but it's using the right mic as well now.
Nice.
Okay, and
Okay.
then
I'm going to mute myself, and you can start when you're ready.
yeah, let me get my presentation that I made this morning up. Hopefully, yeah, did not need to do that full screen, but yeah. And then share my screen, and I'm going to. Okay, go there. Hello, everyone, and this is my little retrospective thing on my Game Jam game, Skremplet's Trash Battle. Mostly coded, it was coded by me, though I did get Edwin Damon to do a lot of graphics, as we'll talk about. So, looking back at last year's Game Jam, the restaurant thing, so like people really like my gameplay, especially that it was such a replayable experience. But my presentation needed improvement. I mostly just used stock assets, LKB's drawings, and pretty bad paint in order to make things work. So one of the things I wanted to do was to work with someone else to help on some of the graphics and sound areas that I'm not as strong with. But one of the things I also wanted to get my idea more quickly because, like, I had an idea within a day or two, but I could go even quicker and just try to get things within scope and start to get off the ground running faster. So if we go back to the start, day of, I'm thinking of just like when I hear about the trash message, I suddenly in my mind I just thought like this seems like it could work for a puzzle game because the idea of like removing trash seems like we could just match different kinds together in some way. I had been like experimenting with like a Puzzle League clone, just seeing if that could work in Godot. But eventually I just decided, like I somehow went from like puzzle game to something competitive to my idea that was just like picking pieces from a shared pool. And then somehow, I'm not sure if it was explicit or just subconscious, that the idea like the Mario Party 5 one piece out, obviously you can see the very similar similarities to what I ended up doing in my game. So if we look at the parameters, one of the things I liked about a competitive puzzle game is that it works easily with the Goblik endowments. So like in that initial brainstorming, I had like ideas of like adding things to the board for like 3 of them and then direct attacks. And then the other 2 that were weird that eventually just ended up out of scope. And then the sweater itself could also be a power up. And the idea of giving up your endowment also works well with a power up thing. We have an obvious antagonist, and the environmental message of removing trash makes sense. Though the story was mostly a late addition, the idea of bringing everyone together for a tournament and then eventually the DSD stuff was a very last minute thing, and the whole why do we want to stop Boy Howdy, etc. was all very late. So if we look at the programming stuff, I just had to think about like what my pain points are going to be and how I was going to work on things. So the idea of picking up pieces from a grid and then placing them and having them clear, it's just a coincidence that I just happened to do another grid thing again after last year's thing. Like, as we'll talk about in like my conclusions, I want to do something different next year. Yeah, the idea of making different characters and how they need to have systems. And then, like, one of the big coding problems is that I need to figure out how to work with the AI. Because if I'm going to do competitive, I need to have a computer player to play against. Because obviously, multiplayer isn't practical for something like this. It was a stretch goal, but I knew that it probably wasn't going to happen. And then, of course, the big thing were going to be the presentation improvements I mentioned with graphics and sound. But then comes the fateful encounter. Like, I had shared my first devlog, and it was pretty basic. And then Edwin, I finally get someone to bite after asking, like, I want help with graphics and sound, but I don't know what I want help with. And then Edwin's like, I'm making a similar game. You want help with yours? And then we go into DMs, and that's how I actually have something that looks decent this year. So Edwin did share with me some of his concepts. So, like, for example, here's what he used as reference for the dumpster. You can see the door here that eventually I put like the power up bar and the piece tracker thing. Yeah, I can see some of his references. And then for the background of the main warehouse, he looked up a bunch of like places with trash, which makes sense with and you can see how the conveyor belt is integrated well into everything. And then for the characters, he decided to look at just children looking up, I guess, as a way for that unique perspective. Yeah, that surprised me the most. And I knew that had to get into this showcase. But then, like, looking at the coding itself, like, you could see a lot of reuse, particularly from last year. Like, a lot of the main stuff of the grid. My cutscene code is almost verbatim from last year, though I did need to add some stuff like the choice and cut out some of the extraneous things. Yeah, the pop-ups and the title screen are all the same. This may be kind of cheating since I'm using stuff from our previous game jam, but it's not really that much different than, like, say, using a Unity asset pack or something. And I mean, it's a completely different type of game other than being on a grid. But then the problem that I never really was quite happy with was the AI. So right now, how the AI works is like the AI can either be picking randomly, which DSD and I believe Orc pick randomly, or it can pick the biggest piece. Boy Howdy does that, and I think Pastoriche and maybe Grimp does that. And then it just tries to put it next to another piece in a random orientation. And the way it works is it just tries to do that 1,000 times, checks if it's legal. If it is, you place it down. If not, you try again, try again, try again. Or eventually, if you don't put it, it just tries to put it somewhere randomly and try again, try again, try again. And then eventually I had to just figure out, like, I need to figure out, like, what is a legal place? The first legal place. This is a place that's guaranteed to work, so place it there to stop things from breaking. So yeah, I just never really found a way to make that just work smoothly. But then the design. So one of the most important things is that since I was working with Edwin for assets, that enforced my limited scope. Somehow I was able to make a bunch of different assets for me while still making his own great game. So things like only having the two backgrounds, one for the cutscenes and one for like the play. So one of the funniest parts is like one of my only characters that's like original is that reporter guy. Like he was originally going to be like just generic human guy, but instead of making him like a painting, I just put Zugtug in as like my placeholder for the cutscenes. But then eventually I just realized, hey, he kind of looks like a reporter, and decided just to have him be the reporter guy, and then he can become my elephant in the room when it's like, wait, you're a Skremplet, but you weren't part of the whole like Skremplets were gone. So I don't know if any people noticed that. But then also there was the fifth color he made. So like I had tried making the purple like toxic waste, but then the problem is that like my initial things were too big. So like if the AI picked one, especially Boy Howdy, because I think I only had the purples in for the Boy Howdy battle, like he'd pick it and then he'd die in like a couple moves because it was hard to find a space for these things. So I eventually just cut it. I did mean to go back to it, but I kind of just didn't bother with the limited amount of time we had. And then so we had the three main characters that Edwin got nice graphics for. And then there were two more that were actually pretty close. So Gretchen her power was gonna be like, she'd like add a piece of garbage to the opponent's board, and then she'd like shuffle around all the garbage. So like and the thing is like Gretchen was close, and Miss Cherry would be similar. It's like she placed the pie, which Edwin did get to make because that's very simple. I was going to have that appear on your board, and then if you cleared it, you'd clear all the garbage from your side as well. Which both of these things like could have just piggybacked on the same way I did for the sweater, like because I already have a thing that like just takes all the garbage and does something with it. I could either like just remove it or place it on the same board, but at the end, I decided to focus on getting free play mode working instead of just 2 extra characters that wouldn't even have assets to begin with. So, like, I would just have a cropped version of the LKB sketch. So, overall, I did love my planning and documentation. So, like, the devlogs with short videos. I like doing this every year as kind of a way to keep track of things. There's a Google Doc that I'll put a link to shortly in the chat if people are interested. Yeah, it just has like notes on what I was doing. There's some stuff that I copied over to this presentation. Yeah, but the thing is, like, next year I don't want to do another grid-based thing using the mouse. I want to do something different because, yeah, as different as like the core game was, it did feel like I was doing a lot of the same things, and I want to continue to grow as a designer and do something different, even if that means it's probably going to be more complicated and need more stuff. I mean, like, especially since I didn't, like, the main new thing here was the AI, and I kind of got that to work, sort of. We'll see. Yeah, and the other part is that I didn't actually get sound into my game. Yeah, I did want to, by the end, just put in some stock music or sound effects in particular, but again, like, that would require learning Godot's sound system, and I was fighting all the AI problems with the coding, and that was annoying. So it just kind of I pushed it back and pushed it back, and eventually it was the end of the project. And then working with people is a great success, and I'm still shocked at how much people can get done with teams and stuff. Like, even though I got a lot done, it's with just 2 people, and more like 1.5 because Edwin wasn't able to dedicate his full time to me. So it just seemed like I was doing a lot of things, and everything was working really well. So I think that's the end. So if anyone has any questions,
Cool. So about 5 minutes left.
yeah. Okay, so bring that down and then grab my thing. Yeah, I got a link here. Just share. Anyone can view it. That in. No Chabello, not the restaurant shooter, the one where you were like growing the crops last year in the grid. That's the one. Yeah. Okay, you figured that out. Yes, AI was always the problem, Zorgla. Because AI is like CPU opponents as opposed to what AI means nowadays. Yeah. Let's see here. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, Edwin's art is really always impressive. Yeah. Yeah, Bellbot. I mean, I didn't really get multiplayer, but yeah, AI is interesting, even though I guess it is a pretty much work. I don't know how much other people did with AI. Yeah. So Zorgla asks, do you want to try more story next year? That I'm not so sure about. Like, maybe, I mean, my interests have always been in gameplay stuff, which is one, like, because that's what I like to do with my games is make something I would like to play, which of course isn't what they tell you to do in like game design school or whatever. Like, maybe if I had a writer, that would help, but I'm already asking for a lot with people who are making graphics and sound. And then a lot of the story is kind of made for you by Kyle, which is interesting. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Did you deliberately do a Tetris like because you know it would suck Kyle right in?
I mean, not particularly. Like, I had thought, like, just puzzle something or other. Like, I mean, the idea of Tetris blocks and stuff was always made by the whole with the garbage. Like, one of the things that like Edwin and I were deciding was whether we wanted to have like each piece be uniquely designed or have it be like blocks of various things. I chose the latter because I knew that would be easier. So like he could just make me a block and I could make my own pieces if I wanted to change them around and stuff easily. We had thought the idea of like we could do the full things, but instead we just did the blocks because that made the most sense from what we were doing.
Yeah, I was just teasing, but I would also say I did play this game on stream myself, and I think I was sucked in as well. He got
Yeah.
the Tetris bug hooked us.
Yeah, that's the thing with both of my games, both last year and this year. They suck people in. The fact that I add like a free player endless mode also seems to help that. Like, here's the way you can play more of this if you want forever. Anything else?
Got about a minute and a half. Anything, guys?
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a good mobile game. Yeah. Look, I've thought about wanting to like maybe do something more with this because the mechanics would work better. Yeah, as opposed to something like last year's like growing thing, which is very specific. Could be generalized very easily. Though I'm just worried that a lot of the back end stuff is like very messy and hard to do. So yeah, if no one else has much, I do want to thank Edwin again for helping me get like actually have good graphics this time, which is so nice. Yeah.
Cool. Those compliments roll in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming up here and sharing that.
Yeah.
All that. Look at all that applause.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. If you would kindly leave the stage. Cool. Thank you so much. All right. Next up, we have SLIMEBALL with Kabloop. Kabloop, let's see if you're still having audio issues. Wait to speak.
Hello,
Hey,
can you hear me?
It's working.
Whoa, cool. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll just do my thing. Yeah, I'll just do it. I'll just do it live then. Yeah.
All right,
Great.
cool. I'll mute myself and you can carry on.
I would turn it down, but I honestly have no idea. And I couldn't really get it to work correctly before.
Don't
So my
don't worry about that. I
apologies.
can adjust the audio input on my
Okay.
end.
Okay. Just give me a moment. So cool. Yeah, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to dive into it then. Great. Okay. Hello, my name's Kabloop. I'm the solo developer of the game SLIMEBALL. Today I'm going to talk about how I approached its development and some of the things that were important to me as I worked on the game over a period of around 8 to 10 days / evenings. First up, here's a bit of info about me. I'm a British solo game developer. I've worked in the industry in a variety of roles, including creative marketing at a game publisher. My first game, Digger Gun, is out sometime in November. A demo is in the October Steam Fest, which starts next week. Yay! So do go check that out if you want to. I've been following Kyle since his first episode of The Final Bossman at Game Trailers. I've wanted to participate in the community game jams since they began several years ago, but I always struggled to make a good prototype and get the ball rolling, or just simply didn't have a good enough idea. I think I also just lacked the confidence as well. After watching the VOD this year about the game jam setup, I decided to start playing around and see if I had something. Before I go into how I approached the game's development, here's some info about SLIMEBALL. So SLIMEBALL was made in Construct 3. Construct 3 is an HTML5 based visual programming game engine. Construct 3 is fairly bare bones, meaning that it's up to you to program and implement a lot of the nitty gritty. This is a game engine I have a lot of experience with, and my upcoming game, Digger Gun, is made with this engine. I do recommend Construct 3 for anyone who's interested in game development but concerned about programming. It's really simple yet incredibly powerful game engine. It's an excellent tool that just gets you into actually designing games very quickly. Visually, SLIMEBALL uses an extended Pico 8 aesthetic. For those who don't know, Pico 8 is a cool digital console where all the games are restricted to 128 by 128 resolution with 8x8 sprites and a limited color palette. I do extend on that, which I'll go into a little bit later. So how did I get started on SLIMEBALL? The first thing I started off with was the central gameplay mechanic. That is holding the attack button to charge up the sword and then releasing it to attack. This was a mechanic I kind of played around with many years ago in a prototype, but couldn't quite get it to work. I've had it stuck in my head since then, so I decided to try and make a game with that mechanic again. I think initially I thought, yeah, maybe you can be a Skremplet killing other Skremplets this way. Maybe that would be kind of like the general gist of it. Within the first hour or two, I managed to get the central gameplay mechanic programmed in. However, I still wasn't sure if it was enough for me to build a game around, and I wasn't really sure at that point if I was going to submit anything to the Game Jam. The moment I decided that I was going to enter the Robot Party Game Jam occurred after a few more evenings playing around with the central mechanic. I was trying to work on making the sword attack feel really good. Adding the slash tech made the slash effect made the attack feel great and gave the mechanic a lot of weight. However, it was when I added the blood splats and their accompanying sound effects, that's when everything came together for me, and I knew I had a good game for the Game Jam. It's important to note that at this point, SLIMEBALL is just different colored squares of varying sizes. It's all very wonky. It looked very different to what the current screenshots of the game represent. And in this slide, there's a little bit of code. This is the visual programming. There's a little bit of code about what happens when you collide with an enemy when your character is attacking. It spawns like 50 to 100 blood splats everywhere, and they all have various kind of bullet speeds, and they all do various little things. Yeah. So I knew I had a game, and I knew I wanted to enter the Game Jam. But I had some aims. My first one was to finish and submit something that was polished. This meant that the game had to have all the bells, whistles, tutorial sound effects, music, etc. I really wanted to make something that felt really done, even if it was only like 5 minutes of game. I just wanted to make it as polished as possible. My other aims were to build up and expand on some of my skills, whilst also making sure to explore what was possible with the game and the mechanic. Once I had the game mechanic down, it was time to finalize the viewpoint. What do I mean by viewpoint, and why is it so important? I think a lot about viewpoints for some reason. I don't really know why. But to me, the viewpoint is how a game is viewed and interacted with by the player. It's not just the perspective of the camera, but all the small details of how that perspective is utilized in terms of presenting the gameplay. For example, in a 2D side-scrolling platformer, how far should the camera be zoomed in? How big should the sprites be? Where does the UI sit, etc.? I classify with that as the viewpoint. Even the question of how much of a level the player needs to be able to view in relation to the gameplay mechanics can be quite a difficult question to answer so early on, with technical specs needing to be considered as well. There's a big difference between 128 resolution and 256 resolution, as you can see via these screenshots of SLIMEBALL. The bigger resolution, yeah, you see more, but with the smaller resolution, everything feels a little bit more compact and a little bit more personal. So these are like really big decisions that we all make during our game, and I always get stuck on these quite a lot. Because then what you decide what a game will be like will then go on to inform a game's visual style too, can inform stuff like gameplay mechanics and and the intricacies of how that's all programmed and stuff like that. Viewpoints are really, really important because a lot of the games we consider have really well-defined viewpoints. For example, Advance Wars, visually everything is clear and readable, something which is aided by the different colored units. You can clearly see the interactive point, and that's the cursor, as it's highlighted really well, with its size just being a little bit bigger than the units. The cursor's perfect size makes you want to move it over the units and press A. You can see where the interaction is, and it feels really great to play that game. So that's kind of what I mean by viewpoints, if it's still a bit confusing. For this game jam, I had very limited time to consider the viewpoint and any of the technical or design specs. So instead, I just decided to use Pico 8's restrictions for my game as a quick jumping off point to find the viewpoint and the visual style as well. Pico 8 uses 8x8 sprites. However, one of the things that I found that I needed was that I needed the game to be more readable. So I actually increased the sprite sizes for the characters to 12 times 12. And then Cat's sprite size is actually 16 times 16. This is to accommodate her big sword. This meant that the sprites stood out a bit more in the world and gave the game some more character, which was something I was desperately looking for. I really wanted to make a game that felt like it had some character in some shape or form. It meant the bigger sprite sizes meant I could add things like eyes and make game mechanics clearly readable in the world, such as the sword charging up. I kept the 128 by 128 resolution from Pico 8 as it fit the game that I wanted to make. Kind of small and personal. And that's how I overcame my anxiety about the viewpoint. And from there, SLIMEBALL's development proceeded really, really smoothly. I think it feels quite good to move around the world in SLIMEBALL, but also everything is readable and easy to understand, I hope. It feels very interactive, at least to me, and I think that means I succeeded in terms of the viewpoint. The viewpoint and the visual style being defined pretty much happened at the same time, so they pretty much they pretty much came together. So at this point, I've got the game mechanic down, I've got the viewpoint down, I know how the game will look and feel, so then I started working on these scenarios. Initially, I was thinking that the character could be a Skremplet killing other Skremplets. However, I felt like that was a bit too violent, so instead I opted for the slimes and moved that into like an environmental focus. A lot of the story was actually defined by me creating the main character Cat with her giant sword, showing it to my partner, and then my partner saying that it looked like a cat. So from there, everything kind of flowed together, and I decided to make it an animal world, which the Skremplets have kind of mysteriously appeared into. Initially, the main character Cat was going to be a Skremplet. So yeah, I think that's just a really crazy thing that kind of shaped the game, I think. Something I wanted to focus on a lot was the writing, making sure the dialogue was short and succinct, but also provided a lot of contextual and really importantly emotional information. My aim was to make the player feel connected to Kat through links to her sister and family, references to previous shortcomings, and by filling her and the world with a lot of mystery. Overall, I'm really happy with how the story turned out. I personally believe that it's really important for games to be about something and have a personal meaning and message. I think this is especially important for independent game creators, as the only thing that makes your game stand out is you. In Dig-A-Gun, I made the theme of inequality something you naturally experience through the gameplay, making it something that the player themselves need to think about. For SLIMEBALL, I wanted to focus on a more story-driven message, so instead I put a lot of the pro-environment and political messages in the dialogue, mainly in a jokey way. I was really glad that the ending got a big belly laugh from Kyle and chat, as when I wrote it, I was chuckling to myself because I thought the community would really enjoy it. With regards to DSD's sweater, I had the idea very early on, and I'm glad I managed to implement it in its entirety. The sweater actually has 30 lines of dialogue, and I just really love the idea of having this annoying sweater following you around, repeating DSD's most dullest thoughts and everyday interactions. I just thought that was really, really fun, kind of annoying, but also kind of fun at the same time. So at that point, once I've got the mechanics, viewpoint, and scenario, I've written the script, etc. I'm just working on adding content to the game. Game jam games are going to be really buggy, messy, and unrealized. That's just game jam games. Time's tight. Thoughts need to be concise. Mistakes are made as we developers try to find a good balance between exploring an idea and making a finished product. For me in SLIMEBALL, I had this really cool mechanic, but instead I made the platforming a bit too difficult with tight jumps and frustrating hidden obstacles. I don't like that type of design, and I'm unsure why I put it in, but it was just a part of the game's development exploration, and you can't learn from things unless you do them. I did utilize the slash mechanic in platforming, which I'm really happy with, but I wish I had made the platforming feel a bit more fun and easier, and instead focused on making more interesting combat scenarios for the player. Another thing is my game was buggy with Kyle dashing through the wall, skipping most of the game. That sucked, especially because I knew about that bug, but I just couldn't fix it in time. I was actually up the night before trying to fix it, but I just could not find a way to fix it. On the topic of that bug, here's a bit of a technical rundown of how the bug worked. Basically, it was caused by you press down the button to attack, and then if you change the directions, move left and right, and then release the attack button shortly after changing directions, then the character will dash forward and clip through the wall, etc., etc. You have to do all these things within like a matter of like seconds, but it is quite easy to do when you're just playing it. In the stream, Kyle got teleported because the character, after clipping through the wall, went down and then hit a door collision box, which was hidden out of view. I was unsure what specific piece of code was causing the problem, but it was just kind of one of those things where it was just kind of everything. I've actually fixed this and re-uploaded the game now. I basically had to rewrite almost the entirety of the code, which or the attack code. So here is a before and after. So you can see here, basically, if you can see here the before and after. Now you get kind of like pushed back a little bit. I don't know why I showed it on this bit that looks like it should be a doorway. The point is there's a solid collision there, and it happens on any solid collision. So now you get pushed back a little bit, and I think gameplay wise it's the same. I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference, but programming wise it's all been kind of completely redone.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt. We have just about a minute left.
Oh, crikey. Okay. I think I will. Okay. Oh, well, that's okay because this is pretty much the last slide. So in terms of things that went really well, I think I achieved my aim of submitting a fairly polished game to the Robot Party Game Jam, and that makes me really happy. And I feel like I achieved a lot of my aims, and more importantly, made a really weird game that feels distinctively me. And yeah, I'm really, really happy about that. I am thinking about whether to expand on SLIMEBALL. I really enjoyed making the game. I have like tons of ideas, but it's one of those things that we'll see. I'll keep the chat updated. Should I decide to expand on it? And yeah, that's everything. Thanks for listening, and thank you for playing SLIMEBALL. I deeply appreciate this amazing community, and whilst I don't get to interact with the community, mainly because I'm a VOD watcher, it was great to meet people and make connections, and the games you guys made are truly, truly awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for sharing all this. Thanks for coming out of the woodwork as a VOD watcher.
Yeah. I'm really glad I got to participate, and it was a really awesome experience. And you guys all made fantastic games, so thank you so much.
Cool. I know there's no time for questions, but chat, you can always post them in chat, and you can feel free to answer them there.
Yeah, great.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Cool. All righty. Balbot is up next with Zugtug Cleans Up. Oh, but yep.
Hey, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
So I actually sent a video along this year thinking my internet wouldn't work, and then like 2 days ago it fixed itself, but the video's done now, so let's go with that anyways.
That's how it goes. Okay, I'll mute myself and you can take control.
Do you have the video on your side?
I do, but you're here, so
Okay, give me a second. I was planning on being lazy here and leaving.
No, I was planning on being lazy.
Okay.
Partly if there's technical screw-ups, I can't be blamed on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if there's though, I'll still blame you anyways. Okay. That's full screen.
Also, it's a YouTube video, and I'm always terrified what recommended videos will pop up at the end.
That's a good point. I should get ready to pause. Okay.
Cool, looking good.
Do we have audio on it? Boy, howdy, Robot Party.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. I'll mute myself and play that then. Boy, howdy, Robot Party. My internet's been an awful mess lately, so this year I'm going to send a video along for the Post-Mortems instead. Fingers crossed though, a few of us from my team should still be in the chat so we can answer any questions like, why would you do this? Okay, so let's start with the initial concept and planning. In my opinion, this is normally the most important stage of the game, as a bad plan will ruin the project before you even start. And so after not really doing anything for the first couple of days, we try to decide what our plan even was. And then I farted out these doodles explaining a really dumb idea that I had that I thought would be funny. Everything was kind of focused on this idea of stumbling into scenes that other people were having, and you're just sort of being a menace in the background whilst they perform little skits. As you can see by the fact that the example of the mechanic has the VAR skid in it from the final game, there wasn't really any iteration on this plan. I just took the doodle and started working on it. I put together a very basic prototype using models and animations from previous projects as a placeholder. Meanwhile, Zach was going to be handling all of the artwork and started modelling Zugtug. After the first couple of days, I contacted some voice actors to see if they were interested, and they said, sure, let me see the script. And it was at that point where I realised we didn't actually have a script, and so I quickly just scribbled something down. And it was pretty much that first draft that made it into the game. The only two changes I made after sending the script was the keep your hat on line from the tutorial, after the controversial removal of Grimp Dundle's hat from the official art, and the great butt line, because I felt it was funny that Zugtug was just staring at her at that perfect height for the entire scene like a little creep. And fitting with the lack of planning, for the level design I just did a quick little doodle and then moved on with that. I really wish I added more verticality in platforming, but what can you do? A little bit into the third week, I had all of the programming and writing done. I'd also grade boxed the entire level, and I started modelling basic things. I'd also modelled and rigged Boy Howdy. But sadly, Zach had been pretty busy so far, and so Zugtug still wasn't finished. And this caused a pretty big bottleneck, because without the main character model, then we don't have an art direction to follow, and I can't finish coding up the main character, or doing any of his animations, or even the cutscenes. To remedy this, we made a quick decision to try and speed things up by switching roles. I was now going to take on all of the rigged characters, and Zach was going to work on the static meshes. I took Zach's mostly done model of Zugtug, and then just did a final few changes and coloured it up. I also used his same Zugtug base for the other Skremplets, since this would save time and keep them all looking somewhat consistent. Zach then went absolutely ham making objects of trash and came out with all of these. Sadly, this was pretty close to the deadline, so not all of them could make it into the game, but most of them did, and it instantly made the game look way less empty. For all of the humans, I knew I wouldn't have enough time left to model, UV, texture, rig, and animate 9 characters at the same quality as the Skremplets. So instead, I opened up Paint and quickly doodled some very rough characters. I then started modelling as quickly and roughly as possible to match these rough doodles, without trying to second guess anything or spend a bunch of time adjusting each of them. Each day after work, I would get around 2 of them created, animated, and fully implemented, which never would have happened if they'd been any more complex. This does, however, mean that the parent and son look like someone melted the cast of Katamari. And that was pretty much the last thing to be done. After that, we had a finished game for people to play. Chevelle came in clutch with a logo at the last second when I was uploading the game, and Woojak tested it out, and showed me that the message to return home wasn't super clear. I should make some of the jumps a little more forgiving and increase the coyote time. I also quickly want to mention that for the credits I stuck to normal categories for each person's role, but that doesn't really show how open I want the project to be. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that they were free to throw any ideas they wanted in, and I would do my best to implement them. So Zach came up with things like the Skremplets' homes are giant trash cans, and the voice actors would often come up with their own ideas for voices that they felt would suit the characters, or ad-lib a few lines to pick from. For example, even though the line just says good, Stupidly Epic sent several different takes, different things he thought would be funnier, such as,
Good! Yeah, alright, good for you. You know what? Good. I'm glad you heard it, okay?
And pretty much every time, these lines were way better, and they were the ones that I ended up using in the final project. In fact, Ickety sent me 2 versions of all of Boy Howdy's lines, labelled Regular and Extra Canadian. Of course it was the Extra Canadian ones I went with, eh? Okay, next up, let's take a look at the stuff that never made it in. I'd actually written an extra 3 little scenes that I didn't even bother sending to the voice actors. I cut them almost immediately. Firstly, upon taking the sweater, DSD would appear, float around menacingly, starting an epic evil monologue about how the sweater was bait and now you're cursed with its effects. Before he gets to the important bit though, and actually explains what those effects are, he just gets sucker punched by Zugtug. It would then be a callback to the beginning bit with Grim Dundle, in which Zugtug would say, "Man, that guy's annoying," and a gasping DSD would say, "I heard that." The next ones were part of a plan to make the world seem more believable, by having an ocean on one side of the map and then a big tunnel road on the other, that lets people who live in this world exit this area. The first would be that if you tried to enter the tunnel, Zugtug would stop and say it's too dark, he can't progress without a lantern, that he definitely 100% mispronounces as Lunton, before correcting himself. The second would be if the player tried to enter the ocean, he would comment on how he's at risk of getting clean if he does, and so he would refuse to go in. Both of these I didn't bother with because I was worried that they'd make players spend time looking for a lantern or a boat, and ultimately I was overthinking how weird it would feel to have a weird closed-in little town, and I was trying to solve a problem that really didn't need solving. The final scene that didn't make it in involved a bathroom. You know, the panda to Kyle. The idea was that you'd break into a guy's bathroom and he would just be the absolute worst person imaginable. He mistakes you for a plumber and starts telling you about how he loves damaging the environment in very weird, specific educational ways. And of course accept that he's an awful person that no one should like. Ultimately, I just felt that this was a bit forced and wasn't accomplishing anything that the other scenes weren't already doing, so I left it behind. The last thing I wanted to cover here was just going through a few little tidbits of interesting things that I thought you guys may like. Every destroyable object had a small section in the corner of its texture that would be used to give the trash its colours. The guy bragging about his totally real supermodel genius girlfriend who loves the environment is actually a bunch of separate lines randomly selected one after another, on a loop forever. They're all written to end with something like, "Oh, and I also said," so they will feed into whatever the next randomly selected line is, without having a weird breakpoint right at the beginning and end of every line that's super obvious. The cool chicken sandwich in DSD's room was actually originally just a small model of Chip from a previous game last year that I'd lazily dropped in. But Zach had the idea to replace it with one of BokBok's famous cold chicken sandwiches. I really want to go back to the father and son model, make them less hideous, but sadly I didn't have the time for it, and so the heads just got reshaped to be very slightly less bad at the final second. Since we started before Kyle's art was coloured up, Zugtug originally had brown hair and pale green skin. By the time I had to make a proper texture for him, LKB had coloured them up, so I changed it to match that. We very briefly toyed around with the idea of giving Zugtug a giant moustache instead of a mouth. He would talk in the same way the voice collector does, but in the end we decided that he needed a real mouth. He was doing a lot of talking after all. Zugtug actually has 2 sets of arms to give him a quick smear when he attacks. This helps us make the swings feel really snappy and satisfying. Here is the highly detailed diagram that I sent to Zach to explain how it should work. If you step outside of the room with the lady, and put a lot of effort into moving the camera so you can actually look at her butt, you see a message shaming you. No one pointed this out, so I'm assuming you're all either not weirdos, or weirdos who like to keep it a secret. Either way, good job, keep it that way. And lastly, the idea was never to make Zugtug naked. The plan was just to have him rip off his referee shirt to show that he's no longer following the rules, which is great on paper, but I didn't think about how it would actually look in-game. In the end though, it turned out to be pretty funny, so we just left it in. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, hopefully one of us is around to answer. And the whole process was a huge blast as always. Looking forward to next year. There we go.
All right, so we got a lot of time, so start asking questions.
Zach's also in the chat as well, if anyone has any questions for him about the artwork. Question, how long does the dialogue between the two bros go? It's actually infinite. It's just like, I want to say about 20 lines-ish, and they just keep going on loop. It just picks one at random, as long as it wasn't one the ones that's already been picked before it goes through all the list and refreshes. So each time you play it, it will be different things they say, like order-wise, but it'll just come from the same pool, and it will never ever end. Yeah, how much is recorded? I'm not entirely sure. It's been a while since I looked, but I think it was around 20 lines. They had more dialogue than any of the other characters. What games were the biggest inspiration? That's a good question. I kind of just went with it. I didn't really look at much reference. I probably should have done. What wasn't intentionally inspiration, though, was my game from last year. And then as soon as Woojack played it, they were like, hey, you've just done the same thing again. You're like crashing into everything. And I somehow did not realize that until they said it, but they're 100% correct. No, don't tempt me to make a Crash trilogy.
Yeah, all that means is you have a motif. That's all great directors do.
So I'm locking in now, okay? Next year, no smashing into things.
No one believes
Any
you.
other questions? Are we all good?
Okay, I'll ask a question. I mean, I thought your game was delightful as always. The crashing of the car scene. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so originally I was going to have more of the scenes start like that, where it's sort of the camera moves to it. That was one of the first things we prototyped, and it can lock you in place. But it kind of felt like it was just taking away too much control for too long. Even though it was like just to focus you on that, and then you had the gameplay. So for most of them, it just cuts hard to it. That was kind of like the last of the tests, I guess. It was kind of a time I wanted to cut away from it and go like the other ones and just have a hard cut to you're always playing, you never lose control. But then there's a chance you could see like the car spawn in, or you could just turn around and not notice it's coming towards you, or even just go in front of the car and then get, yeeted out of the map. So for that one, I sadly had to lock people in. What part of the rules were the hardest to implement? I actually didn't find them that difficult to see. I know a lot of people complained about them, but I honestly felt like it was pretty easy to go in, especially with the idea of it's a bunch of little scenes, right? Like I can just make it so each scene focuses on a different rule. So like that wasn't really a huge issue with this game design, I guess.
I think it's actually a pretty clever way of addressing all the rules.
Thanks.
So
Cool.
a few
If there's
minutes
no
left.
further
I'm just seeing what
ones,
Kabloop
I'll-
is typing.
Do I think players love to just destroy things? I think so. I think there's like something primitive inside of us that just, if we can just smash everything in a game world, it's always fun. Yep, lizard brain. Yeah, I actually didn't think about DK Bonanza. I really should have done. But yeah, that seems like a really obvious thing to go to. Yeah, that's a good point, Chabelle, about Zugtug's endowment. I was thinking about how we can incorporate the endowments at some point. I was talking with Zach about it. And we were kind of feeling like, other than Kina, a lot of them are like kind of tricky to implement into gameplay. So in the end, we just decided not to really use it, other than the intro bit where you pull Boy Howdy and say, ha, I knew I'd win. It's like a slight reference to it, but it wasn't a real tug of war. Cool. In that case,
Great.
I'll jump out early and let the next guy take over.
Cool. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I was recently at a museum surrounded by ancient pottery, and the only thing in my head was which would be the most fun to destroy.
Don't do it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. If you like to step down from the stage.
Sure. See you.
Thank you. Cool. Next up, we have Subterranean Loser with Dream Diver. You're so easy to find and check because you have such an iconic icon.
Thanks. Shoot, I was like just gonna change my icon. Now
You're
making
stuck.
me
You're stuck.
reconsider. Oh no. I see that Ether Penguin is in the crowd too.
Do you want him up as well?
Well, if you want to join Ether Penguin, like feel free. If not, don't worry about it. Or if you want to like pop in afterward, I have another pre-recorded video. Oh, you don't have a mic. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm like kind of feeling under the weather, so I didn't want to do a presentation where I couldn't like edit out all my gross mouth sounds. Excuse me. So yeah, I have a video. Let me share it. One moment. How do I do that? Do I just have to share my screen?
Yeah, on the bottom there should be a share your screen, and you'll have options whether you want to share just an application, a window, or full monitor.
Okay, excuse me just a second. Luckily my video is pretty short, so I'll take a little bit of time setting this up. So I'll just take all my time doing this.
Thanksgiving dinner. It means we got Canadian in chat.
Okay, I'm gonna crank. Okay, and then can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me know if the volume is good. I'm gonna test it just a second, and then I'll play the whole thing if we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Subterranean Loser of Team Pretzel. Does that sound good? Volume
That
good?
sounds great.
You can hear it? Okay. Cool, here it goes.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Subterranean Loser of Team Pretzel. For the 2025 Game Jam, we created Dream Diver. Dream Diver was initially conceptualized by Ether Penguin and Limey, with the initial idea being that it would be an RPG that takes place where you go into different characters' dreams and then collect these Skremplets. I had really wanted to do a sort of fixed camera, pre-rendered classic RPG kind of look, but we quickly realized that that wasn't really feasible with the different camera angles that were needed to tell the story that we wanted to tell. It would have been so much 2D art that would have needed to be created. Ether Penguin actually created a really good character controller that worked really well with my system of swapping camera angles. So we were able to achieve the kind of fixed camera or stationary camera aesthetic, but with 3D environments. Pixelcod and Moosemaid did the concept art and the 2D texture work, and Pixelcod did the 3D modeling for the environments. But yeah, the two of them really took on the task of creating the world of Dream Diver. Limey and I, Subterranean Loser, came up with the general narrative, and then Limey wrote a bunch of different beat sheets until we got one that could realistically be experienced within 25 minutes. Limey then wrote the script with a bunch of hilarious dialogue, some of which sadly didn't make it into the final game due to some of my programming incompetence and also the deadline. Ether Penguin's battle system was like the real meat of this project. And actually, I really got so excited about the game when I first played through started to play through the battles. They're just so fun. The battle system's really creative. It's super unique. I don't know what else I can say. It's just fun. Also aside, the music that you heard throughout the game and throughout this video was done by Matt B and Yokai Blotch. I'd say it was definitely a challenge to come up with the ending for our game, making it appropriately toned, considering like the environmental message. Any ending that I came up with was always way too dark or cynical, and just kind of a bummer. thankfully, Limey was able to come up with our ending with some levity and humor, like jump cut into the credits, just sort of rounding out the whole narrative of the project. The credits, we really wanted to have a Earthbound type photo montage, or maybe even like an Ocarina of Time-esque, like going around to all the different parts of the world that the characters had seen on their adventure. So it would have been, you know, you have to imagine the game being the end of an RPG. The characters would have been on this whole globe-trotting adventure. Sadly, that was another thing that was like scope-wise, everyone had their hands full non-stop, really. With game jams also, like I always try to try to learn something that I've never done before. So in this case, I'd never like done 3D animated cinematics. And so that was, I would definitely have done a lot of things differently if I were to go back. The way that I'd set up those cinematics made it really hard to like edit or add extra lines or move things around without like totally breaking the whole thing. But yeah, overall, Dream Diver, I think we did a pretty good job at like seeing through our vision. I think that all like came together along with like the concept and the narrative to like really, and the music of course. Yeah, I think everything really came together at the last second to be a really fun little RPG. So yeah, thanks for playing the game, and thanks for letting me talk about it. Goodbye.
Cool.
Okay.
That was tight.
I can do questions now. I could take some questions. Absolutely, FF9 was definitely like one of the top inspirations for sure. I there was a few more, but I can't I don't want to look through our old Discord to find it. But yeah, FF9 was definitely one of them. Balba, the control shift, even if you play the current version of the game, is still kind of an issue. We had to be really careful about like where we placed the cameras, because and just be very mindful of like where the player would enter the different like camera triggers. Because if you had like a camera in one orientation and then walk into that area and it's facing the opposite direction and you start like walking the other way, right? Because your whole control scheme shifts around. It wouldn't work. So we just had to be very mindful of the camera's like positionings in which ones were adjacent to each other. There's still a couple spots in the game though where like the controls like totally flip around and it's really jarring, but for the most part we were able to design around it. Yeah, I think it's just like Zorgla, yeah, I think it is simply the nature of like of that system. I think that's why like tank controls like almost work better for fixed cameras, but there's the obviously drawbacks to both. Bo Hardy was definitely Liquid Snake inspiration for sure. I think as soon as Limey Otoko came up with him being the brother, we were like, oh, we gotta go like full Liquid on this because and we at one point wanted to do voice acting and we would have absolutely done like a super Liquid Snake voice. But obviously we didn't get voice acting in. Visually Mario Sunshine. I like that. That wasn't what it wasn't an inspiration, but like I love Mario Sunshine, so it was probably like a subconscious inspiration. I'm sure everyone on our team like is in love with Mario Sunshine. Such a good game. I could share. Actually, let me pull up that video again and just play it through on mute so you can see some of the artwork while I'm rambling on. But especially, like, I wanted to call out some of these dialogue moments that didn't make it in the game. There were some moments where, like, if you guys just want, I'm not going to read the whole thing because my throat hurts, but yeah, there's some really good, like, oh, and there was a part after this that I didn't screen cap where, Boy Howdy wants to fuse with Pastoriche, and like Pastoriche is like, yeah, right, like because Pastoriche like kind of low key hates Boy Howdy, because everybody kind of low key hates Boy Howdy. So after the two fuse, they're like, oh, can we fuse too? And then he's like, no way, I'm not gonna let you do that. The cutscenes were fun. I do have like a background in like videography and also like animation, 2D animated cinematics. So I was able to like use some of my knowledge from that. Uh but yeah, I actually had a really good time doing 3D animation for that. It was fun. But definitely like the cutscenes and like using Unity Timeline is always like, I feel like I learn something new about Unity Timeline every time I have to use it. Uh, and I would definitely have changed certain things about how I set that up because yeah, it had some issues for sure. But yeah, yay learning. I don't know if you want me to get in the nitty gritty of it, but basically the way I had the lines set up was like the dialogue lines would like trigger at after you like increase the integer variable of like what line you're at. But the way that like changing variables on the timeline, it works in like a separate window than like the animation clips. And so having to go back and forth every time you wanted to like adjust something and like getting the frames like precisely lined up was like really stupid and annoying, and I would not do that the same way. Yes, Bo Hardy was absolutely a reference to Kyle's typo. That was uh that was Limey's idea. That was and I thought that was very hilarious. Oh, I just him in Frozen on this line of text. Let me see what yeah, there was supposed to be some like mid combat dialogue and stuff too. Um Go to the artwork and play it. Can I play it like low speed? No. Okay. Yeah, that was so yeah, that was a thought, something we were mindful of at one point. But no, yeah, that the we were trying to be careful about like how do we go about like mixing up, like it's clearly going to be hard to tell the two apart when you're reading the dialogue. um but no, we never really solved that. Yeah, there was a lot of mix-ups in the, that was another thing, the cutscenes went way too fast. And I wanted to at the last minute add just like a script that plays the game at like 0.75 speed or something, like while the cutscenes are going, so that it would be like an approximation of like easy enough to read, but I never had time to implement that. Yeah, for sure. story in a 25-minute game is very hard. We had a lot of ideas, like in terms of like lore and like getting into the sort of metaphysical, like almost pseudo spiritual aspect of like cards living in people's subconsciousness, and the whole like lore behind like extracting Skremplets from people's subconscious, and like the sort of like pseudoscience and like pseudo spirituality behind that. But that never really right, we it informed a lot of like of the narrative, but obviously we couldn't like dig too much into it.
Okay, we've got time for like one or two more questions. Third grade Midian had a question for you.
I missed it. First RPG project. Let me think. This is definitely like the first RPG project that like made it this far into development. I had a couple. Oh, you know what? I did do like a GB Studio game. And I'm currently working on like a JRPG demo, proof of concept kind of thing. But yeah, no, this is yeah, I think aside from like GB Studio type stuff, like this would be the first RPG that like I made it this far into.
Cool. All right. I think it should do it for time, unless we're saying a last second compliments or questions.
At the Penguin, is there anything you want me to shout out before we close? Oh, I really wanted to fit this into the video, but I couldn't find. I cut this video at like the last second at their Penguin. There was a really cool glass shatter effect whenever a battle started. I couldn't find the video. Maybe you can post it in the Discord or something. Because this was a very rushed cut. So yeah. Sorry, I wish I could have got that in there though. There's a bunch of stuff I wish I could have gotten in the video.
All right, cool.
But
great.
yeah, it is also in the new video.
Oh, there you go. Go
Yeah.
download,
Okay.
play again. Cool. Well, thank you so very much. That was great.
Thanks, everybody. I will eliminate myself from the chat.
That sounds so extreme.
How do I? Oh, leave the.
Yeah, there we go. Cool. Thank you so much. Alrighty, next Zokul is not here, so I will be showing their video presentation. Give me 1 second to set this up. Hold on, I have to click here. Guys, let me know in chat if the audio is okay. So here we go.
The Skremplets have finally returned to the Trashlands. To celebrate, Shucks, the god of all garbage, is ready to reward any who are willing to sacrifice their beloved trash. Go forth, Skremplets. The dormant refuse of this nearly forgotten kingdom is yours for the taking.
Skremplet Scramble!
Hello, this is Zokul, the creator, designer, and artist of Skremplet Scramble. While we weren't able to get a full digital game out on time this year, I'm glad that we were still able to showcase a small taste of everyone's work on the stream. Meebid and Monody Lee have expressed interest in finishing the digital version too, so there's a chance that these Skremplets will be back. In this presentation, however, I'll mostly be talking about creating the board game itself. By the way, I can't make it today, so if you have any questions at all during this video, just drop it in the chat and I'll answer when the VOD comes out.
Let's get started!
3 ideas from the prompt inspired me. Since the Skremplet IP was originally a children's game, I wanted to match that vibe and keep the game pretty simple to stay within that same demographic. The Secret Sweater collectible meant that the game needed to be about collecting things. And I thought it would be very fun to design characters that didn't care about the basic rules and played the game their own way. So I decided to make a simple roll and move board game, like Mario Party, except all the Skremplet characters would break those basic rules. Does a character need to roll dice in the game? Do they have to move? Do they even have to be on the board? So yes, the core gameplay would be rolling a die, moving down the path, and doing the action of whatever space you land on. But there needed to be some sort of conflict between the players. The Mario Party minigame thing wouldn't work. Time and I assume programming difficulty were factors for that decision, but the big reason was how many extra components and rules there would need to be as a physical board game. After some research, I ended up taking a lot of inspiration from a game called 100% Orange Juice, which has been sitting in my Steam library for years now, and I still haven't played it. One major interaction between players in that game is combat, which is pretty simple. One player rolls a die to attack, and before rolling defense, the defender decides to block and take at least 1 chip damage, or attempt to dodge and risk taking all the damage or nothing. This system works really well for Skremplet Scramble because it doesn't introduce any new components, happens pretty quickly, and adds stats to the game, which harkens back to how the original Skremplets game worked. The subtle environmental lesson was pretty easy to figure out. The main action that players will be going for involves this garbage space. On it, you draw a card and have to decide whether you use the card for its effect and return it to the pile, meaning others can use it later, or you can decide to dump it and take it out of the game completely. Dump enough times and you shed your Goblik endowment. The last major parameter that needed some creative flexing is the rule about shedding endowments. How do you make losing a cool ability still fun? Well, you just replace it with a better ability. I stumbled upon this idea when I was thinking about how I could recontextualize Shucks I Renounce My Ways, and I realized that it could be a trigger to unlock an even cooler, contrasting ability, just like Bankai's in Bleach. The phrase could be a kind of prayer to a god, changing an endowment into an enlightenment. The idea of Goblik enlightenments also enforces the subtle environmental lesson. Cleaning up trash makes your character do awesome things. When it came time to make characters, I wanted them to be very unique. Nothing as superficial as one character starting with more power and another with more defense. I need these guys to stretch what it means to be playing the game. And part of that was deciding what the core aspects of the game were. And for that, I decided that on each turn, a number had to be decided, and players would somehow need to activate one of the actions on the board. Everything else could be twisted and changed. Coming up with character abilities initially wasn't that difficult. My aim was to have about 8 to 10 playable Skremplets, and I did have about a dozen ability ideas in my notes. But having character abilities that had to change into a different, kinda opposite ability, yet still be in line with a character's personality was the real challenge. As I started to have a better grasp of how I wanted the game to feel, I ended up with a couple of design rules that I tried to follow for each character. 1. The character's endowment should give a player a lot of control over what they want to do. 2. A character's enlightenment should be a really cool effect, but should deprive someone of that initial control. This should prevent players from wanting to level up too early. And the last rule, mostly for flavor and a reminder to myself, for the most part, Skremplets shed their endowments, not their detriments. With that in mind, let's talk characters. I ended up with 6 Skremplets, half of which are original. But first, let's start with Boy Howdy.
Hey, that's me!
In order for the players to know how each Skremplet is ignoring the rules, we need a character that actually does play by the rules. And Boy Howdy is the perfect fit to do that. Boy Howdy runs on the rules of the original trivia game. When he draws a card, instead of drawing a garbage card, he draws from the fact deck and reads it out loud. In addition to that, Boy Howdy is very weak and doesn't fight back. This means that he's a very easy target for the other players.
Ouch! That's smart!
Since Boy Howdy is from a different game, I couldn't design him to look ugly or gross. I did want him to be a bit annoying though, so he would be a lot of fun to chase down. The idea is that the game he's from is targeted to a much younger audience, So I asked Nemobody to channel Big Bird from Sesame Street and read some lines as if he were talking to a toddler. He did an excellent job.
I'm okay.
Agave.
We are ready to tumble!
Agavik controls 4 different pawns on the board instead of 1. When he enlightens, he leaves 1 pawn on the board, but the other pawns can be used to buff his rolls. This ability was actually the first concept I had for Keener, but I felt like it didn't really fit her detriment. But more on Keener later.
Look at us, together again!
Anyway, if you can't tell, Agavik's look was inspired in part by Sentai robots, because that's his whole deal. I probably need to adjust his detriment because his Zangief-inspired muscle bro lines don't entirely fit being distracted too well.
Look at these muscles!
Sticklickittle.
Oh, no, anybody but me.
Instead of rolling a die, Sticklickittle plays cards with die faces on them. Because of this, she has a good amount of control over where she can go and how she wants to attack or defend, but when she runs out of cards, she takes damage. When she enlightens, she lets go of her control and succumbs to the roll of the die like everyone else. But not really, because she rolls a d20. This design was actually 2 concepts I came up with put together, and I think they pair pretty well. Keener's abilities were also 2 concepts smashed together, by the way. But again, more on Keener later.
Can't a scrimp have a moment of peace?
I used my signature 4-armed alien design on this character, but I added a lot of Charlie Brown flair to it. My sister-in-law voiced her, and I asked her to take Peridot from Steven Universe as inspiration.
That was so stressful.
Geese.
Not like I had anything better to do today.
Of course, sir.
Gibbs doesn't move when he rolls the die. Actually, Gibbs gets money on the first roll of everybody's turn, but he has to spend it to do stuff. When he enlightens, he loses all his money for a point or 2, which are usually only awarded at the end of a game. And then he has to actually walk around himself.
Yuck. Walking.
Of course, sir.
For his look, I don't think I took inspiration from anything, really. I just thought a lazy person who could turn literal sweat into money would bundle up so they could just sweat constantly. I particularly like the look of the hoodie pulled tight around his head, too. Anyway, I did have to think up why he has to spend money to move. Originally, I thought it would be funny if he sat in a coin-operated car, but I didn't want to draw a coin-operated car. So instead, I gave him a butler named Romaine, voiced by Ickety Acty Oop, who's there to push him around the board and fight his battles for him.
Romaine, push me please.
Yes, sir.
This worked out great for gameplay clarity. I now have a simple visual indicator of what Gibbs can buy when he's enlightened, because he can still buy from the store on his phone, but not from the butler menu. Fun fact about this menu, there's a line that requires the player to confirm that the Skremplets are back at the start of the game.
Cool. Well, back to bed for me. Romaine!
Indeed, sir.
Keener.
Well, it's about time. Keener doesn't play on the board with everyone else. She has her own board, and on it, she can freely go to any space she wants. But because of her endowment, she counts as being on every matching space on the main board. When she enlightens, she targets specific players instead. Now this concept feels more like a narcissistic Keener to me than just a bunch of pawns on the board. You have the real Keener staying at home on her own trash pile, yet still existing on multiple spaces on the board. Then when she enlightens, she's still at home, and she steps out on her balcony and targets players with her portal gun, I think? Not much to say about her visual look. I didn't change too much. I made her hair all pink because I was lazy with the coloring, and I added a big belt because the legs were difficult for me to draw otherwise.
Settle down, darlings. Jealousy is not a good look on you.
Quick side note, when it came to getting voice acting, I just made a Google Doc of each character and their personality and where to take possible inspiration from. I mostly had voice actors choose who they wanted, and I would just pick up the leftovers. Nobody chose Keener, and that's probably because I thought she should have a transatlantic accent. Well, I tried my best, but I probably could have practiced more.
Heavenly shucks, how embarrassing.
Zugtug.
That's right, Sonny. Smart choice.
Before a game starts, Zugtug secretly guesses who will get the most points at the end of the game. and if he's right, Zugtug wins instead. He's also able to move forward and backward. When he enlightens, he reveals his guess and takes half of that player's money. Yeah, Zugtug is definitely a pretty mischievous character. Recently, I updated his design to let him easily steal and give money to other players, so he has a little more agency in getting his guests to win.
Yoink! Looks like I'm the real winner here.
I didn't change his look too much. I just gave him a tail and a new poopy Hawaiian shirt, and my only direction to Ickety was Danny DeVito.
No, my money!
Grimt Dundle.
Alright, let's go, Apple Buddies.
Grimt plays the game fairly normally, except he has these apples that he drops on the board at the end of his turns. When you don't have any more apples to drop, all the apples activate and come back, giving him huge turns where he does a bunch of stuff. When he enlightens, he drops all the apples and they attack the other players when they pass.
Sorry, I have too many of these.
Grimt is the only one of the provided Skremplet designs that I ended up changing drastically. I mostly wanted his head to look like an apple, and then I ended up spinning the annoyingly clean aspect into the idea of a very innocent kid. I debated renaming him to Kid Dundle, but I decided to stick with Grimt. My wife voiced him, and I told her to try to mimic Greg from Over the Garden Wall.
Well, that's enough. I'm kinda hungry.
And that's all the characters. Let's talk about a few features planned for the digital version. An early idea I had was to start with the Boy Howdy game and have the game ask for the player's name. To unlock the real Skremplet game, you would have to type in the Skremplets are and then click back. Sounded funny on paper, but I think the better idea would be similar to what we released, with Boy Howdy giving a quick tutorial of how the basic game plays before the Skremplets take over. Another silly Boy Howdy thing involves the facts. They're supposed to be annoying and unskippable, and when you try to skip his lines, your Skremplet would just make fun of Boy Howdy.
Did you know?
Romaine, plug my ears.
Yes, sir.
Alright, let's talk about this elephant in the room. This little elephant is one of the animal characters from the original Boy Howdy game. I originally planned to make 2 more animals to make it a full 4-player game, just like the actual Skremplet game, but I cut that for time. But yeah, the idea is that, like Boy Howdy, this elephant is a leftover from the original game, but does nothing. Players would just think it's a bug. In the actual rulebook, you are meant to place this elephant pawn on the board, and then it's never mentioned again. For the evening sweater, I planned to just put that in the garbage deck, but it didn't feel secret enough, so I tied it to this elephant. This idea is unique to the digital version right now. I'm not entirely sure how I'll put the sweater in the actual game and keep it balanced. But yeah, if you land on the space with the elephant, you'll take his sweater, which gives you a bunch of buffs, and then the elephant looks like this. So what's next for Skremplet Scramble? I was hoping to have a printable version ready by now, and I probably could have. I just need to whip up a bit more art really. But I want to make sure the game is in a more polished state first. A game like this is difficult to balance, especially with the limited time I dedicated to it. Now that the jam is over and I have more time to go back to designing, I've been making more adjustments. As I record this, I've already made changes to Agavik, Zugtug, Keener, and Boy Howdy. Not just to keep things feeling relatively fair, but also to make sure each character is fun to play. Making Boy Howdy feel just barely viable yet still a dweeb is an interesting challenge.
Howdy doody doody doo.
I'm not thinking too hard about it now, but sometime after I finish that first version of the printable game, I'll probably come up with a bit more content like I usually do. There's space for a few more characters, and I do have a few concepts left over. It's just enlightenments are the hard part to figure out.
Goblin enlightenment.
So that's all I have for Skremplet Scramble. As usual, if you want to play it online with friends, you could do that right now with the PCIO file, although that file is an older version now. I won't be updating it until I finish the printable version. But once I do finish that printable version, I'll print it out and show it off in the art show. Thanks for watching.
I had fun. I hope you all learned a lot today.
So cool you're not here, but thank you so much for that presentation. Some people are asking where you can watch this stuff afterwards. This whole post-mortem will be posted on YouTube. So you'll see the link posted in Discord when it's ready. Cool. Moving right along. EGP Noodles has something for us, and that something is Skremplet's Breakfast Bungle Badventure. Let me find you in chat. There you are. Hello. Come on in.
Hi, everybody. Right, let me just get this set up. Originally, I was going to record a video, but unfortunately, Milo's son's been quite busy this week, so I wasn't able to do that. So I've done this presentation. Hopefully, the presentation is sharing.
It is. So I'm going to mute myself and let you take over.
Okay, then, let's go. Hi, everyone. This is a Post-Mortem on Breakfast Bungle Adventure, a game by me and Milo-san. Basically, we're just going to talk about the timeline of development for the game and a few of the assets that I have made. So basically, when the game first started, I outlined some plans. I wanted to make this an even bigger game than I'd done before. It's going to start in the town, you go out into the city and stuff. Very quickly, I realized that wouldn't work because of the time scale of the previous games. We're running with 5 minutes less in this game jam. So I had a few. The most I made at the start was these few little trash sprites. This trash sprite on the top right is too big, but I worked that out later on. So once it came down to a bit more planning, I drew a really rough layout for the Skremplet town, a lot of which I didn't have much idea of the functionality. You can see on the right where the community house and the restaurant was going to be. It was originally going to be a trash heap. In terms of time scaling, because I knew I'd be the only one really be able to test this, because, well, the way I make games is very slow, so I knew I'd be able to get around to any true testing, I decided to use LiveSplit, which is a tool that's usually used for speedrunning. Basically sort of record how long I take to do each section, and then that way, when I wanted to work on a new segment of the game, I could just time that and add that into the splits rather than having to redo the whole game and timing. Once I finally started making some screens and stuff, I realized my previous tile sets were not going to be up to snuff because, yeah, the town just looked way too clean. It was too clean for a place for garbage lovers to live in. So I had to work out how to sort of dirty up the graphics, but at the same time, all just full of dirt, just looks really sort of muddy, and it didn't really have a good direction on it. So I added in some like patches of clean dirt, that sort of thing. And that helped to build some more of the personality out for the different screens. I was trying to make a usage of a few new things, a few new features in GB Studio, one of which is tile priority. I was interested in this because, I mean, if we all played the Pokemon Red and Blue back on original Game Boy, when you're walking through tall grass, it's a pretty cool effect. Unfortunately, tile priority doesn't quite work like that. Basically, you sort of paint the areas on the screenshot on the right, where you see the grass is highlighted in the bottom. That's where I've painted the tile priority. And basically how this works is that in GB Studio, you work with 4 colors, and your lightest color for the background gets used as transparent. So down on the left, you can see Grimmett is behind some of the tall grass there. On the middle screenshot, he's poking his head out from behind a building. So that helps add some depth to the world. But yeah, like I said, I couldn't really get like a true sort of Pokemon going through tall grass effect, because you just have like half the grass covering you up, half the grass not doing anything. I probably should have taken the slide out, but here's some of the pixel art for the overworld sprites. We're going on talking about the sprite work for this game. This time I wanted to unify sort of overworld and sort of big character sprites. As previously we had the Smokebox Game Jam, where I had the mascots. They were really huge compared to like the player characters and stuff. So during working on the sprites, first was Keener, who ended up being my favorite to work on, because as I was doing the expressions, Keener's got some pretty normal expressions, other than that one on the right, which looks really smuggy, and that really affected my writing of Keener's personality for this. think one of my favorite comments I received was, really charming game. Love the characterizations going on here, especially Keener being a little beep stirrer. And yeah, that just eventually became Keener's personality. Gretchen, I wish I had a bit more usage for, other than to just safeguard the entrance to the Skremplet town. When I initially had the idea where he'd be going outside the city, Gretchen would be the one sort of moving that train that you see to the left of the west area to let people in and out. But yeah, sadly, Gretchen just mostly just sitting there in the main game. In terms of Grimmett, so originally I chose Grimmett to be the main character because of the apple throwing ability, which I actually didn't end up using pretty much anywhere in the game other than for the final sequence. Nonetheless, Grimmett was really fun to do sprite work for. I did 2 versions of Grimmett, one with the DSD sweater, with these little pixels around it to make it appear a little bit glowy. Not much to say about Orchek, sadly, but really fun sprite to work on. The Foozloo was the messiest sprite I had to work on. A lot of my line art, I try to keep, like, a lot of the sprite work and stuff, I try to keep quite clean with the line art and stuff. With Foozloo, it didn't really look right, so ends up with a slightly sort of messier line art, which I think works out for it. I posted this in the Game Jam General, but yeah, basically I wanted Foozloo to be even bigger during his talking scenes. Unfortunately, this sprite size is pretty much the largest sprite size I can work with without the sprites just breaking and just not appearing correctly. Zugtug. So Zugtug, originally I had a scene with Zugtug in the west area where he'd like go to train with Grimmett. He'd hurt himself like a few seconds in. This could be like maybe like an older tug of war injuries and stuff. But yeah, sadly, Zugtug, I didn't get to use him for the part that I wanted him to, so he's just mostly just talky stuff. Pastoriche. Let's see. Yes, Pastoriche's maze. Yeah. It's really one of the only solid plans I had going on for this jam. I've wanted to do spooky stuff for a while. I had like one spooky screen in the last project we did, so I wanted to elaborate on that a bit. I knew I was making this for Kyle, so I didn't want to like make it too dangerous for him, otherwise it might be too much for him. But yeah, one of the things that really helped here was Milo-san's music. It just really sold the vibe. Just basically let me just sort of design a sort of maze sequence, and yeah, I think it just really carried the vibes through to that section. And Miss Cherry. Miss Cherry was also one of the first sprites that I did, and funnily enough, her quest became the main thing tying the game's narrative together, because as I was thinking about more quests and stuff to do, I realized I wouldn't have time to put them in. So somehow this one collection quest became like the main crux of the entire game, and then it became the narrative for the game. So we went from, the Skremplets got to go out into a city, they're gonna like cause trouble, but that trouble is gonna end up like inadvertently like helping people, and they'll learn lessons from it. And it all got scoped down to, we're gonna get this all done before breakfast. One thing about the Miss Cherry Pie thing. When we was thinking about names for the game, Milo-san came up with Skremplets on Toast, which I really loved. But because Miss Cherry's power is all about pie, it was like, it doesn't really work out. Boy howdy. Yeah, hardest character to implement, because I knew I wanted him for the ending, but I didn't know what sort of character I really wanted for him, or exactly like what I wanted to do with him. I was trying to test a boss fight sequence very similar to last year's, like the thing I did from last year. It's very much the same ending from last year. But for some reason, Boy Howdy's sprite, it was just flickering like mad, and I couldn't work out what's going on. So I just decided to run with it and turn the whole thing into a Dragon Ball Z kind of sequence, which ended up, well, you could see it in the writing, and it affected his personality. Yeah, I ended up really enjoyed working on Boy Howdy, especially how expressive he can be. Anything else to talk about? Yeah, community Skremplets. Community Skremplets were really cool, and something I really wish I got to add more of into my game. For the nightmare sequence, the 8 Skremplets sitting down, they should have been community Skremplets, but I didn't have enough time, so they just ended up being the main cast. In terms of this project, it is so far the largest Game Boy Studio project I've done, despite us having 5 minutes less to work with. as being over twice the size of my first Robot Party Jam project. It was quite interesting looking back at this because I was looking back at my first Post-Mortem and I realized I said that I would like to work on different engines and stuff. And here I am 3 years on still using GB Studio. But I really like using this. It's nice and simple. There's a lot of limitations though. One of the limitations I had was trying to add a menu screen, which I tried to do last year. This year I made notes because I forgot why it didn't work last year. So the way that I have the Skremplet cards turn up is I have a store screen functionality and then it restores the screen afterwards. But the problem is if you stack too many stored screens, you get a sort of error message like on the left, which I was planning to use for the nightmare sequence, but then, GP Studio crashed and I forgot to save, and yeah, I never actually got around to restoring that part. But yeah, I'd really like to get a menu sequence working, but just like last year, the menu ended up becoming part of the credit sequence, so I'm glad I was able to reuse it for that. And yeah, that's basically the long and short of Skremplet's Breakfast Bungle Badventure. Shoutouts. Big shoutouts to Milo-san. I would basically give him notes for like what sort of music I was looking for, and the next day he would have like several songs ready for me, which really informs the tone and narrative of the game as I was writing it. Yeah, massive shoutouts to Milo-san. Shoutouts to Kyle and Robot Party community. You're all awesome. And shoutouts to Mama Crumples. Thank you for hosting this Post-Mortem. That's everything.
Shucks, you're welcome. We have about 4 minutes left, so you want to field any questions? Well, I'll start. I loved the Pastoriche sequence and how that sort of came out of nowhere. Was that always the plan, just to come out of nowhere and like twist the game?
Yeah, that's very much the sequence I had planned. It felt a little bit. It felt a little bit sort of copycatish because we've had that sort of thing happen before in previous game jams. But at the same time, I really wanted to do a sequence like that, so I just sort of committed to it regardless. I think the hardest thing was just making it sort of a convincing sort of looking shift. Yeah, like getting the screen transitions to like sort of look like they were either glitching or something.
Well, personally speaking, I think it worked.
Thank you. Kaploob. Love the use of color in the world. Felt it was really chaotic to me, which I think suited the game. Was that your intention? Kinda. I generally, with GB Studio, my favorite thing with working in it is just sort of packing in details with the amount of limits that I have. And yeah, sometimes that can cause a lot of like pixel clutter, a bit of messiness of the colors, but yeah, if you think it suited the game, I'm pretty happy with it. How bright and different all the colors were. It's really nice. Thank you.
Ooh, we still have a few more minutes. Any last questions, guys? No questions, but a lot of compliments.
Thank you for the tile work. Oh, we have Balpod typing. Was it tricky to have it be kind of open world and still fit within 25 minutes? Absolutely. It is the main reason I was using live split to time like the sections and stuff. Because yeah, like you can explore in any way you want. I'm not sure how much descriptive text people are gonna like, how many things people are gonna click on. I basically made sure to like add 10 minutes in my head for Kyle time as well. So I think it all kind of fit in the 25 minutes.
I like the phrase Kyle time.
Well, you know, you got your Don minutes in Easy A. You got Kyle time over here. But yeah, if that is everything, I guess I'll jump off the stage and hand it to the next person.
Cool.
Thank you for having
Well,
me.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was fun.
Streaming and leave the stage. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, as it turns out, my team is next. What? Give me a second to get set up here. Okay, it's a little tricky to get all this running. Okay, cool. You're excited for the making of these puppets. Well, let's get started. Okay, so hi, I'm Neil, also known by my Christian name, Mayor McFrumples, and I'll be representing my team for our game, The Time I Shifted to a Dream Dimension and Gambled Against Puppets for My Freedom, or, in this case, Puppets Pressed for Time. Because not to make excuses, but for all of us on my team, the game jam happened at a really bad time, and I won't get into details of my team, but personally speaking, I was prepping for another cross-country move while trying to do major repairs in my apartment. And there was a matter of trying to find extra team members to help out, which was a huge struggle this year. As you can see, our team this year is about a third of the size as last year. But I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I don't want to harp on it too much because I think the game turned out well, despite all our obstacles we encountered. So let's go off with the shout outs to the passionate puppet team. Little Kimpbit did the puppets and the writing, Punk Rock Glock, puppets, music and sound design, and myself doing puppets, coding, and art. So when I first made this presentation, I said our two major inspirations were old school point and click 90s games and a medieval dice game called Farkle, as seen in Kingdom Come Deliverance. And just this morning, I forgot that the game Jutaro was also a major influence. Check it out if you're into weird stop motion Scottish games. So starting with the Muppets. Late last year, I streamed the 1996 Muppet Treasure Island CD-ROM game, a game in which you follow the plot of Muppet Treasure Island. It's a point and click where you click on certain objects and the Muppets will pop up little animations, and it's a sweet, cute, charming ass game. And as I was playing it, I said, wouldn't it be hilarious if we made a game like this for next year's Game Jam? Yes, LKB forced me to play it, and there's no regrets because here we are. And then there's the game of Farkle. In the game Kingdom Come Deliverance, they introduced you to a game called Farkle, a little game you can play on the side. And it's a dice game that has existed since the 1600s. The objective of Farkle is to roll dice, get combos, and bank points. What happens is you push your luck as far as you want before you end your turn. Because you run the risk. What happens if you roll your dice and you get no combos before you end your turn, you Farkle, and you lose any points you have banked. So go figure, I've become obsessed with a game like this. And in my spare time, I was developing a Farkle RPG on paper. I really couldn't figure out the viability of it until Balatro came out, and I was like, oh shoot, this is totally viable. And I used this game jam as sort of, trial run to see if I could make it work. And here's the pitch I came to the team with. The original concept was to use lunch bag puppets instead of sock puppets. The idea being paper bags are more eco-friendly than a plastic bag, and the plastic bag character would have been the big bad. Of course, we switched over to the sock puppets, but we kept the plastic bag for Pastoriche. And the idea to use actual photography was a result of scope. I would have loved to have gotten like pre-rendered 3D backgrounds, but we couldn't find enough people for our team. So it's like, well, we'll just take pictures of town and try to make it work. At the bottom here, the idea was always to have Skremplets to eat Pastoriche alive. That never changed. Speaking of the map, oh, here's another image from the pitch. I drew it out to say this is how it would work. Here's the map. Here's the whole map. There was like anything in orange is like, okay, we could potentially cut this out. In the end, we didn't cut as much out as I thought we would. Mostly just stuff to create better flow. And this is also missing the DSD Peace Pagoda. And this is probably too big, but I think in the end it was just enough that you get a taste of it without getting too lost. Speaking of cuts, here are some other areas that did not make it. There's a whole graveyard section. Basically what happened was I spent about 3 hours walking around town getting sunburned and taking photos of what I thought would make good places for the game to take place in, and that would have like a logical flow. Regret not getting the graveyard in, especially regret not getting more of the parking garage in. There was all like cool, weird scenery that would have been nice and dystopian. Anywho, that aside, oops, oh, other cuts. I forgot we had other cuts. Among the other cuts was, I really wanted to have fully voice-acted cutscenes. That didn't happen because we had a struggle finding voice actors. I wanted a cutscene per character. And I wanted sound effects for the cutscenes. And just ran out of time. We have chomping sounds of every character, and they just did not make it in. So it was a game of compromises, but you know, what else is new? Making the puppets. So the best part of this game jam was getting together to make puppets. The three of us lived close enough together that we were able to hang out together for a weekend and spend an unnecessary amount of time and money, especially, constructing the puppets. Bizarrely enough, finding colored socks proved to be very, very difficult. Finding fuzzy socks, just as difficult. According to a Walmart employee, these items are seasonal and only hit the shelves in November. So we really had to make do with what we get. And I had to cut up some really expensive, nice socks. Well, you can see here's our table with all this, all the things that we bought. It was a mess. So for the most part, our characters were either made through improvisation. You're like, oh, what sort of accessories look good on this character that I'm making? Or based off community Skremplets. The exception is the main character, who was designed by LKB. And you can see it has a bit of a little bit of Rolfness to it, but not quite. But because everyone loves Rolf, and it's just such a fun design. And the mohawk, so good. Okay, so it's time to light the lights. I was fortunate enough at the time to have a basement to shoot the green screen stuff. It was certainly not the most convenient setup, but we weren't aiming for perfection. We wanted to have like enough roughness to the color keys. It felt like a scrappy production. So what's funny is you get to see like, see a little cameo from my cat Grumbles, who was wondering what the heck I was doing lying on my back with my arm like stuck up in the air. And some other things you can see, I had to travel to the next town over to find a fuzzy dice. They are really hard to find. And there's a fork holding up some actual cotton stuffing to get the poof effect. So who wants to know how to make a puppet? So this game, these instructions came courtesy of the Fizzy Show on YouTube. Ironically, well after this, I found an even better tutorial, which involves less cutting, but this is what we use, so that's what we'll be showing. First thing you want to do is make an incision across the toe stitching. That creates basically that opening for the mouth. Next thing you do is you cut an oval shape out of cardboard that's roughly the size of your fingers. You're going to fold that over because that's going to be our mouth. Next thing you do is you hot glue the corners of that cardboard and then press the lips over top of it. And you can see it basically creates the mouth. Following that, you can get some fabric or colored foam board to create the quote-unquote mouth of the puppet. And you just hot glue that over the cardboard. Really, if you have a hot glue gun, you are set. And what this also does is covers up any imperfections around the lip area. Then you add some peripherals, whatever you want, hair, eyes, hats, and voila! There you go. That's how you make a sock puppet. Okay, moving on. And then actually that's how you make a ton of sock puppets. This was after we had made everything. We took pictures of all of them. And as you can see, a lot of them don't have names yet. We made the sock puppets first, and we came up with the names after the fact and their personalities. Thank you. Yeah, I think the puppets are great too. Before I wrap up, just to do a few more behind the curtain stuff, I need to give credit to and apologies to the Buddhist monks of Peace Pagoda because we let DSD take over. But this is what it looks like before it got DSD-ified. Here's some initial footage I took as I was trying to assemble a prototype to see if this could actually work. I was using a soccer sock against a white wall. And here's the evolution of Sparkle in the top left-hand corner. This is what I assembled in a day to say, can I make this work? UI is an absolute trash. As you move to the right, gets a little cleaner. We got Rolf in there, still using the sock puppet as, the soccer sock as an enemy. And then bottom left is when we finally got the fuzzy dice in there, which really started to bring things together, but you can't hear it, but bottom right-hand corner is when we got the music and sound effects. I really think without that, this game is not nearly as appealing. It's not just, for me, it's not just a glue, but it was like the bells and whistles and all the flair involved as well. And the very, 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 very last thing I did was to include the versus Pastoriche versus Chime versus Boy Howdy in the background, because otherwise there's no way of knowing the characters' names. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Any questions? Chabella says, I've always said music and audio plays more factor than you think, and I 100% agree. It feels like you're just looking at bones without audio. Very silent. Those bones gotta rattle. Where are we doing the puppets now? We distributed them. I have the black and white one. I have Orch, and I have Beatrice. I'm going to mount them behind me. I'm going to turn them to like hunting trophies and mount them behind me for my streams. I'm not cutting them up, though. I'm not cutting them up. They will be preserved. It's just going to look like they've been mounted. Make a sock puppet account. Would you change anything about how you approach the puppets and how they work in the game? No. I mean, obviously, with more time, we could do some more fidelity, improve the green screen, do a lot of like cleaning up. But like, I recognize the nature of a game jam, and you're really throwing things together. You're throwing spaghetti at a wall, and you're happy with whatever sticks. Although actually I will say I'm going to use a different tutorial for the sock puppets because I found a better one. Love the audio work in this. How did you go about creating them? That is all punk rock Glock. I had very little to do with audio besides doing the voice of Pastoriche and I think Blandy. Yeah, as LKB said, it's one of those things like, what would you do better? I would change time, the space-time continuum, you know, to do the jam at an earlier time when it was more convenient for all of us. But there's really not much. Again, like I said, I thought we were going to tank this year. I thought I did a poor job, and so seeing the reception filled my heart with joy. Yeah, EGP Noodle says, I missed all the good September game releases to concentrate on the jam. Same here. I appreciate that, Chabello. I got about a minute left. RPG with cool puppets. I was going to use woodworking. That was the initial, not to spoil anything, because I do make it. I was going to use woodworking, but I want to do something physical. Oh, no, I did not see the question about the battle system. Oh, any plans to expand the battle system into another game? The deck building aspect and being able to choose green-blue dice Dice Combos was really fun. Well, thank you. Yes, this is kind of like a dry run for the RPG I'm developing. A Farkle RPG, which is more Farkle than this game is. We have to like do Farkle Light here. Sorry, it's called Sparkle. Sparkle. But yeah, this was kind of a trial run to see if these things could work and be fun to play with. Would I work with puppets again? I would work with puppets all the time if that was an option. I would work with puppets over human any day of the week. I would become puppet myself if that's what it took. Yeah, if you type play Farkle online, you can play Farkle online. Okay, a few more seconds. Any preference of medium? Ooh, personally, puppetry. I've done claymation. It's too finicky. And puppetry lets you like wag your hand around and make funny, puppet stuff. Cool. Well, that is it. That is it for my time. Yeah, claymation is so difficult. Mad respect to anyone who works in that medium. But I also recommend you go check out the game Jutaro, which is so charming, so cool. Cool. I'm going to stay up here because I have to present the next game on behalf of Edwin Dahman, who is absent. But they have provided video here. Okay, I'm going to go full screen. Full screen. There we go. And if we're all ready, I'm going to hit play. Guys, as always, let me know if levels are okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Edwin, and this is a video about Foozloos, Fancy Free. I wasn't sure
No audio.
if I was...
Sorry. Let's try again. Custom. Frame rate, mute stream audio, advanced. There's no option. Okay, there's no, hold on. Let's see if I can do this again. Options. If anyone knows,
going to be there live.
If anyone knows, actually, for those of you who streamed your YouTube videos, how did you share with that audio? I shared screen and it just worked. Go figure. Yeah, I'm sharing a window. Let's see. Share the window, not the entire screen. That's what I was doing. Sorry, guys. Oh, technical problems. You share your screen, applications, not entire screen. Yeah, there's no option for audio here. Wait. Yeah. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. I was like, shoot, this was our time to catch up. I have to Yeah, take a bio break. We'll be ready in about 2 minutes. I just have to acquire the video. Okay, I got it. Unfortunately, I do not think we have subtitles. What I will do, though... Nope, not that. Bingo, baby. Cool. We're ready to go. Sorry, everyone get back to your seats. Get on back. Play both at once so you get the YouTube subtitles. That is a terrible idea, and I'm going to do it. All right, okay. I have way too many tabs open. This is ridiculous. Okay, we're gonna go full screen. Oh boy. Oh, it's not gonna work because it's capturing. Oh, okay, forget it. Technically, we were doing so great this time around. Yeah, here's the link if you need subtitles. That's smart, right there. I don't think we'll need subtitles. I think Edwin Domino's just being very, very courteous. All right. Anyway, without further ado, let's get it on.
Hi everyone, I'm Edwin, and this is a video about Foozloos, Fancy Free. I wasn't sure if I was going to be there live for this year's Post-Mortem, but I wanted to share this video anyway. It's a playthrough of the game 1 week into the game jam before it looked like this. And I thought it would be fun to talk over it and share my thoughts and ideas. So this was the 4th time for me participating in the Robot Party Jam, and this one was slightly different. I have a short list of ideas for games that I still want to make, and one of those was a Tetris platformer. And because I knew I had less time than previous years, I just grabbed the idea off the shelf and tried to make it fit with Skremplets. For the main part of the game, the blocks, I figured, what if they were old shipping containers full of discarded Skremplets? What if they were such a failure, entire shipments had to be dumped into the sea? And I was happy to see that The Return of the Skremplets, an interactive documentary by Evan Donuts, also had a similar idea. In my head, my game sort of fits within the canon of that documentary, sort of. My idea of a Tetris platformer back at the start of the game jam was to have both parts of that happen simultaneously. So the platforming and the Tetrising. You would play Tetris while one of the Skremplets would make their way across at the same time. And I started with just Grimt as the character. He would jump and glide using his apple bag as a parachute. And he would either make it across or die in the process, usually pretty quickly because the bridge wasn't ready yet. So yeah, that kind of sucked. So I opted to split it into 2 phases. The building phase and the crossing phase. There's something cool about planning out a certain strategy and then seeing if your plans work out. And it also added a short moment of relief in between strategizing and playing. But I quickly discovered that having just Grimt was still boring. If you had 2 blocks stacked on top of each other as an obstacle, you would always fail. You couldn't get over it, and you would have to start over. There was basically no room for error. So as a test, I summoned multiple Grims, or circles at the time, to see what would happen if they could stack on top of each other. And then it clicked. They could help each other get across, and I was able to set a number as a goal instead of all or nothing, 0 or 1. But then I realized I had to draw a lot of Skremplets. Having multiple Grims didn't make much sense, and I didn't really have the time to draw and design like 61 Skremplets. So I looked at the roster and I thought, well, the Foozloos would be a much better fit. So I scrapped all the other Skremplets, and suddenly the story made more sense too. The Foozloos themselves might be an environmental hazard. The goblin endowment of summoning Foozloos would make more sense as a thing to shed. It's not perfect. It would make more sense if the Foozloos were summoned from the forest instead of being stuck in containers, but it was good enough. I worked for 3 days straight, and what you see here is the result after week 1. And if you played the game, you will notice that not a lot has changed between this prototype and the final game. I only added the final 2 levels with lava blocks and the ending sequence later, which wasn't written at the time yet. Obviously the music wasn't there either, it's only here through the magic of editing. But this video without sound was the video that I sent to Lam, who did the music. After he asked for a reference, I sent him this song by The Sword, which I obviously cannot play here for copyright reasons, along with this mood board to give him a sense of the vibe of the game. And he was off to the races and started jamming. We talked a bit before the game jam if he was interested in collaborating, and he was, but he wasn't sure about how much he would be able to do, which was fine. I thought I would only need 2 songs, one for the cutscenes and one for the gameplay. So after he gave me the thumbs up, I didn't hear from him for like 2 weeks, which was fine, and then he came back with a demo about 2.5 minutes long. And it was exactly the right vibe, and the tempo even lined up with the pace of the blocks falling down. I told him it was perfect and asked if he could add just a little bit at the front as a lead-in, and a little bit more at the end that would build it to something wilder. So another week passed, and he came back with this 10-minute long epic song, and was exactly tuned to the length and intensity of each level. It was more than I could ever expect, so unfortunately he couldn't join me for this post-mortem, but I'm incredibly grateful, and I think this soundtrack has some of the best Lamb material we've heard. I'm also really happy that it got the Outstanding Original Soundtrack Award. Or as Lam wrote to me in his response, "Oh shit, hell yeah." Speaking of lambing, this game was inspired by lemmings, even though I kind of stumbled into the idea of it. I've always liked the idea of lemmings, and I've played it a lot as a kid, but the game makes some weird gameplay choices, I think. There's a lot of waiting involved in between interacting with the lemmings individually, and it gets pretty cluttered when a lot of lemmings are in the same place. I think having the Foozloos be uninteractable kind of solves that problem. The response to the game has been incredible, and a lot of people have been saying that the gameplay loop is strong enough that it could be expanded into a standalone indie game. And I really appreciate those comments, so thank you all for the kind words. I do feel like out of the 4 games I made for the game jams, this is the most focused and immediately clear and fun. It was also fun to see how quickly it hooked certain people.
Okay. In the interest of time, probably hold. Okay, we're only 15 minutes in. We're doing good. in the interest of time, my chat says probably give up, right?
Every year I write down the lessons I learn. I have to admit the list is getting pretty long, but here are 3 new lessons I learned this year. Number 1, your first idea is not always the best idea, so be prepared to shift and evolve. Number 2, stop trying to do everything yourself. Number 3, don't double dip. I did art for Vincent's game at the same time, and while it was rewarding and fun to do, it did turn out to be a bit too much for me. On top of working a full-time job, switching jobs, buying a new apartment, making my own game, and yeah, I probably won't be doing that in the future. And that's kind of all I got. Maybe I'll be there live to answer questions. If not, you can still reach me on the Discord, and I'll look at the VOD and try to answer questions sometime later, if there are any. I hope that was interesting in some way. I hope the Post-Mortem was good as a whole. I'm sure it was. I believe there's one more after me, looking at the schedule, so have fun with that one, and see you next year. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Edwin Dahmen. Yeah, guys, I guess you can you? Yeah, if you want to @ Edwin Dahmen in this chat with questions, you may do so, and he can swing in by later and answer them. Alrighty, moving right along. Chibanobi slipped in there last second with Kilter. I'm gonna invite you up to speak.
Hello.
Hello. Do you want anyone else up here or just you?
I guess just me. I ended up making a video last minute, and that basically covers the entire retrospective of me making the game. So that pretty much speaks for itself.
Cool. I'll let you do that since I'm having technical issues here.
Okay. Well, hopefully I don't fall into the same trap because I am just playing it off of YouTube. I guess technically I could just play it from my own Explorer, but I'm gonna try YouTube first. Also, shout out to Shabello. She has been my rock, my foundation, keeping me sane while working on this game. Supplied the music and the project managing skills. So Shabello, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
And the logo, jeez.
Yes, the logo. Very important. I'm really bad with titles and stuff like that, but Shabello just came in clutch. I guess we need 60 frames, why not? Okay.
Cool. I will mute and let you take over.
Alrighty. Hey everybody, my name is Chibanobi. Last year I was going to create a game for the first time, but then I got a new job and had to move different states, and then I ended up just not being able to do it, which made me kind of mad. So I decided to actually follow through this year, and so hopefully this video sounds and gets the message across. My name is Chibanobi, and this is my video game, Kilter. The game is divided into 3 acts. Each act consists of 1 minigame and 1 visual novel sequence. Each minigame has its own mechanic, but the real mechanic of Kilter is the dialogue choices available in each minigame. Pressing tab on key locations or moments will trigger a conversation. These conversations will give insight to Nayeli's perspective based on who she's talking to. Nayeli is the protagonist. In the minigame, you don't play as Nayeli. You play as either the volunteer or a game tester. The idea is to have this sort of diegetic interaction between you, the player, who's actually playing Kilter, and the person playing the video game experience that Nayeli created. So these conversations get converted into notes that you can use during your Zoom call. So it's here that the notes act as the decisions that get selected moving forward. There are 3 notes in total, which is 3 conversations in total. There's always going to be 1 positive conversation and then 2 negative conversations. Well, if you find all 3 notes in the minigame and then you select all 3 notes in the visual novel, then the end result will have Nayeli be more negative moving forward to the next act. And so you have to select specific notes in order to get specific endings. Hi, Editor Chibanobi here. Yeah, there are 7 endings to the game. It's all laid out in the cutscene at the very end. So throughout the game, after you select which options you pick, it's going to put you on a route, either positive, neutral, or negative, towards the beginning of Act 2. Now in Act 2, that's where the endings sort of extend to extra options. Here you have both negative and positive, and also neutral as a route to go through. But there's also super negative and super positive for the more extreme angles. And this carries over to Act 3, where you can get up to horrendously positive or horrendously negative. So that's 7 options in total to the very end. This is where you see the star at the very beginning of Act 1 being N, lowercase n, which is neutral. And then at the very end of Act 3, you see the star sort of existing at the final option, which can be anywhere from horrendously negative to strongly negative, negative, neutral, positive, severely positive, or horrendously positive. So there's 7 endings to the game in total. Just wanted to add that in there. The second minigame has special dialogue in these specific locations. Programming this minigame was tricky. Initially, I was loading in each level in an empty object and would rotate the empty object when the power was used. This got the job done until I added an enemy object that moved around. This caused bizarre translating and lerping. I had to revamp the code only to move the camera and player in tandem while leaving the level alone. This allowed for enemy movement to be undisturbed regardless of when the rotation is applied. Oddly enough, the enemy movement broke down. For some reason, the enemy movements just stopped working. If you watch Kyle's stream of the game, you can see him get kind of puzzled by seeing the white ball with the light source, and he just had no idea what to make of it. He clearly thought there was something supposed to happen. That enemy was supposed to move around, but it broke down after like the last week of working on the game. I just couldn't fix it. The last minigame is just a card game. Initially it was based off of blackjack, but then eventually I just didn't have enough time to actually fix the number sequence, so you can just get more than 21. You can spam it and get up to like, I don't even know how high. There's no real level cap. I haven't tested it out yet. I guess the text will break down. Working on UI is such a hassle, man. UI and menus are something that I just never touched before, but it became a problem immediately when I had to use them, and I hated working with it at first. I started using different scenes instead of creating a prefab for them. So a lot of the times when I would open up a UI, it had to load in a different Unity scene as opposed to just like having an image pop up on top of whatever canvas you have or whatever scene that's active, just having the UI pop up in front of the camera. It made organizing such a pain. I have to improve on that next year. So I knew this year that I wanted to use Ink. Ink is a software for managing dialogue and branching narratives. It's a really nice like third-party tool for Unity. It's free. And I also wanted to use Fmod. Fmod's a middleware used for like putting logic to audio. You can use it for like music or sound effects, so it can trigger, and it also like interacts with Unity or whatever game engine you use. Think about WYs, the same fucking thing. And so I spent like 40% of my time just writing dialogue. and that took forever. And then I had to record a lot of lines. Luckily, there were other people in the community who were doing voice acting, so I was able to rely on them for a little bit. That was good. And then I had to chop up audio, and that took forever. I used Cubase to organize all of that. Cubase is just a DAW, or a digital audio workstation, making music and editing sound effects. I use Cubase for. That one is not free. That one costs money, so I have to use it. I have a bunch of audio clips there, and because of how little time I had, because of like the scope was a nightmare. Because of how big the scope was, I just had to cram editing sound, editing vocals, all in like not even 2 weeks. It was less than 2 weeks. It was like 4 or 5 days of just chopping up audio, finding the best take, cleaning up audio, trying to add it into Unity, testing to see if like the sound actually appeared, getting the audio clips to match up the dialogue. That took forever to program. Yeah, and I hated it, and I hated all of it. If I had another me, if there was another Chibinobi who just did audio, it'd be a lot better. But having me do all the programming and having me be the person who chops up all the audio and also has to like write all the dialogue, I will never do that ever again. Next year, no audio. Well, next year, no dialogue. Jesus Christ. Next year, no branching narratives. It's gonna be straightforward. Actually, you know what? Next year, no story. It's gonna be game mechanics that just work with clean UI, and then that's it. That's gonna be my game for next year. Making the game was good, you know. I'm happy I did it. I made comics. That's cool. I'm making animations. Like that's taking forever. It's like, you know what? I can participate in the game jam this year. I'm gonna put a pause on animation. I'm just gonna do game development. Let me see what I can do, and I did it. So that feels good. But I'm happy I made it, and it exists, and I'll most likely never touch it again. But yeah, that's Kilter. And that's the video.
Cool. Still got about 5 minutes, so if you want to take some questions.
Sure thing. Take a look here. You as a nightmare? Yeah, it is. 3D world and 2D menus. Okay. Writing. Any chance we can hear some of the dialogue that didn't make it in? That is a very good question. Yes. If I return, I might pull like a Zorkel and just have like a nice presentation for just audio only, as opposed to like adding all the audio into the game and then presenting like, oh, here's the new official VO build of the game. But a part of me wants to do right by Nimobody and Glow Softly and Eskiden and Zat Van Du, who did some really nice voice work for the characters. It's like, I feel kind of bad for like not doing that, but that's on me for like not being aware of how much scope I needed to actually reduce in order for me to get this game completed. I love writing parts, implementing branching dialogue's a nightmare for me. Yeah, it's good that other people share the same sentiment. It's very easy for me to just hone in on just a project creatively and just get like that easy dopamine of, oh, this small part works. Okay, let me add it to the game. Yeah, it kind of works. And then the moment you mess up, it's like, wow, there's a bunch of bugs I didn't realize. Okay, time to debug for like like a couple of hours, and that'll just end up being the entire day.
So I have to say, when you were lamenting UI, I was like, yeah, man, preach, brother. I think what's something fascinating about game design is you realize how difficult some aspects of game design are.
Yeah, and a lot of it is by instinct. You think of the video game is the mechanic that you interact with. And the moment you try to work with that, you go, okay, I have a game technically, but then you recognize, wow, there's a lot of other moving parts that like lift up the ability to interact with this game. And UI was just one of those things. I had to constantly look on Unity forums and just watch YouTube tutorials. Like, oh, here's canvas size. You gotta know how to expand it. Technically, you gotta change around. There's a bunch of all these tools that you can use. I was like, this is too much for me to learn in like less than a month. Love the concept of this one. It's super out there. Where did you get ideas from? The idea was, it was kind of a collaboration between my struggle with coming up with an idea. Uh, for some reason, Kyle and those requirements, it just didn't mesh with my brain. I was like, how do I make a game about Skremplets? But also, I want to make sure I can have something that's, I want to tell a story, but then like everything sort of felt like half baked. And so eventually, when I was working on the second mini game that had like the rotation puzzles, I started writing dialogue about writing a game. And so that was like the only avenue I could create, because I knew that I had to write a bunch, and I needed to get a lot of that done so that VO artists can just like come in and start working with stuff. And so that was the only real story my brain could come up with before I like went insane. Some of the game idea and try to maintain creative integrity. Yeah. So Shabella was there from the ground floor. It felt good like sharing that, because if Shabella didn't contact me at all about like, oh, the game jam's happening this year, are you going to participate? Then like I would have never asked for her help, and it would have just been me doing everything from scratch. And so I should have taken a page from Edwin Dom and like, hey, don't double dip, because I also did music for Historical, which was really fun. And it was a great distraction for me, not stressing over my game, which was clearly too much for me to handle. But yeah, I've learned my lesson. I'll just put it that way.
Cool. We got time for a question or two.
Are there any extra questions? See Shabello and Abopo typing. It was this is fun. It's like it was always something to aspire to. Each year there would be the game jam. I was thinking, you know what, maybe this is the year. And it was the year. Were there any other designs for the 3D characters other than the purple dino? Yes. So that was based on the second minigame was based on the previous game jam concept, which was the smoke box. And so that ball with the glowing light was supposed to be Squandric, I think. And the purple dino was just a character I can just like make really quickly. It was supposed to be it was like an MC character where they were supposed to deliver the cold chicken, but I wasn't able to implement like them actually using, it'd be a UV sphere, but that would represent the chicken that's being thrown. So I had to like squeeze that in really quickly. Like, okay, these are elements from the last game jam I can do. I can like draw 2D elements and then have that be like the texture for these 3D boxes, and I can use backcalling. The moment I recognize I can just use backcalling to like have that cool isometric look where you can actually look in, but then it's basically just a cube with like no plane for the top and bottom, so you can just see it rotate without like doing any fancy camera work. I was so happy I pulled that off last minute.
Cool. All right.
Thank you, Shabelle.
That's our time, but Chibanola, thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you for having me. Let's see.
Now get. All right, we are at our last presentation. I have actually been crazy looking forward to this one. It is Pastoriche's Nuclear Nightmares with a Bopo, Hyakuriki, and Handstand. Let me get all you guys up here. That's one. Speak. There's two. Who am I missing?
Handstand's not here.
Okay, well. Can't believe you kick him off the team so fast. Harsh. There we go.
Got to motivate him
There
for
we
next
go.
year.
There we go.
Cool. So I am just going to mute myself, and you guys can end this show on a bang.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. This one. If I full screen this, does that look like a full screen slideshow, or did I share the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Nope, it's
I
perfect.
think it looks pretty good.
Okay, great. All right. Welcome to Pastoriche's Nuclear Post-Mortem. Post-Mortem about Pastoriche's Nuclear Nightmares. Game made by us, Baguni team, for 2025 Robot Party Game Jam. So we are Baguni team. Our core team is myself, Abopo. My name's Kevin. Shakuriki, who is here, as well with me, Nathan. Handstandish, who does our 2D art, who's not here this time. Lancerlate, who does our music each year. And then this year, we expanded out a little bit, and friends. We had Ring of Fire join to do the pixel art, and my sister, Karina, to do the watercolor art. And of course, Jins is always here for moral support.
So whenever we, one of these starts, we'll get on a call and we'll throw out ideas. For this year, I think I just threw out single room Metroidvania, not really thinking about what that was. And then we came up with a couple other ideas. We did have a board game idea too. And then I think we had a stealth game idea, but as we were talking about the mechanics for them, every other idea was, oh, we could do this for single room Metroidvania. And it just, clearly was the one we were pushing ideas for. So that's what we went with. It had a couple of benefits for us. Having one screen would be a good way to limit ourselves a bit, we wouldn't do anything crazy. I think we did Chrome Echoes 2022, I think. And I just really burned myself out on that one, and I did not participate in 2023. So I was hoping to hold off a little bit on the scope. Another thing we considered was, hey, if we add a timer to this game and we reset the levels, then we don't have to worry about soft locks, really. Because if you get stuck, there's a timer, the level will reset, and then we don't have to think as hard about it. Though, as you may have seen, that didn't make it.
Yeah, we'll be going into that. Yeah, I wanted to add, the timer felt really cool at the initial, idea stage and sort of prototyping stage, because it made the game kind of feel like an info roguelike, where you're going around and kind of figuring out how the puzzle works first, and then going back and doing it all, now that you know what it's supposed to do. But as we'll see, it didn't turn out that way. But before I talk about that, I want to go over our art style idea. Once we had decided on the multiple dreams single screen idea, Handstandish came up with the thought that it'd be really cool if each dream had its own art style to sort of really set apart which one's which. And so him and I talked through that quite a bit, and we thought it was a really cool idea. But 6 art styles is quite a lot for one person to manage, even though each dream only needs a couple assets, 6 or 7 assets. It ends up being quite a lot. And so this was our first time reaching outside of our core team to fill in a couple of the art styles. And so Handstandish still covered 3 of the art styles. He did the main one, the Crayon Agni Dream, and the sort of outlined Keener Dream. My sister, who I knew she does watercolor art and things like that. So I recruited her in for the first time she ever worked on a game. And she hand painted on canvas watercolor and scanned it into me to put in the game. And then I found Ring of Fire through the Discord, He hadn't been picked up by anybody, and he did pixel art, which stood out a lot. That worked really well. And then earlier this year, I took like a 3D modeling online course, and so I was able to do the Foozloo 3D models, and I think it turned out really cool, and helped the game stand out a lot.
So one screen, pretty simple to do, just a one screen game. That's easy. Most games are many screens. This is just one. But we also wanted to do kind of a puzzle game, which I don't think I had. I mean, we did one the first year, but I had not done any other puzzle games, I think, other than that one. And I just really overestimated what people were capable of doing. I made it way too complicated. And the time limit resetting was both making the game take a really long time and also a little bit frustrating for some people. I think kind of the idea was that people would learn to speedrun the game in order to beat it. You know, they would have to beat the clock. They'd have to figure out their routes. And I think it was just kind of too small of a time for people to learn the levels and put that all together. Oh, and also the single screen, you know, when we introduced the dream idea, the single screen, you know, they're kind of all based on each other, but it's really 6 different screens that ended up more different than I think we originally thought they would, for the sake of interesting puzzles. Here you can also see we have this handy chart that highlights how all the interactive dream objects work. They're all very interconnected. When we were building them, we kind of put like a dummy object in and said, hey, this will probably be a dream object. We'll figure out where to hook it up later. But it ended up becoming a very intricate weave of game mechanics.
Okay. Yeah, so as Nathan said, when we started playtesting, the time to complete was way over the 25 time limit that was set this year. It also took us, so usually we end up getting, I know that playtesting is really important. I'm someone who likes to get playtesting done as early as possible, because it sort of shows you a lot about how the game is progressing and what needs to change. But this time, because of how interconnected the game is, it wasn't easy to get any sort of like playable play tests done for the real puzzles that were in the game, because all the puzzles relied on multiple other puzzles and stuff. And so we didn't get playtesting really until like a week away from deadline, like right near the end. And said playtests went way too long, and players were having a very difficult time like grasping the mechanics. And so we knew that we needed to make some drastic changes before the deadline. And those basically came in 2 things, which is cuts, which is like kind of difficult because again, everything is really interconnected. Anything that is cut in one stage sort of has to be cut from another stage. So all the puzzles need to change. And tutorials. What was your note on this leaving unintended puzzles in, Nathan?
Oh yeah, there's just so the way that most people beat the fan section of the game, for example, in Keener's room, it's intended by design that you actually leave the dream and raise the elevator and come back in the bottom left corner. But people found out, I didn't think there was an easy way to get around that where you never have to leave and come back. But we just didn't fix it because it would have made the game longer. I think there was a couple other puzzles like that too.
Yeah, some puzzles have multiple solutions, or if you come to a puzzle with a power-up already, you can skip some stuff. And we thought that was fine. If you find that, that's cool. And it helps cut the game time down a little bit.
So here on the left, you can see I think this is my second iteration of the Gretchen and Agni levels. Gretchen on the top, Agni on the bottom, and then on the right is the final version that we ended up going with. You can see there's a whole top right section in Gretchen that has been replaced with our monster and gyms. Originally, you were intended to basically solve the first two puzzles the same as in the final one, with some things moved around a little bit. The third puzzle, the idea would be that you had to activate 3 different sprinklers that had additional linked objects from Agni, build the leaf bridge, turn them all off so you could push the pot across. And then there was a ice block from Agni that you had to push down, and then you pushed this pipe above, and then you'd water that, mark it, and bring it to the real world. Way too complicated. We cut all that down to turn on the final sprinkler and then just jump to get the key. For Agni, so a lot of these puzzles, we had in the first version, and we made them a little bit more clear. But there's also a lot of cuts. For Agni, there was a very odd thing where you had to melt ice and then push a pot to absorb the water, and then you wouldn't have to have the furnace on in order to get to the rest of the level. That was the idea behind that. And then up at the top is the ice block connected to Gretchen, and then an additional watering thing. That's how you watered that last pot. See, even I get confused by it. It's too complicated. And then we cut that down to, melt a block. Don't melt the blocks on the left so you can climb up. Shortcut, and then mark that block. Make sure it's not melted. Much simpler, but still fairly complicated when when you build these. You're thinking about, this is the level, these are the puzzles in this level. But once the player's playing it, they're like, okay, these are the puzzles, and also there's 6 other levels of puzzles I have to think about with these. So the design and the actual play, there's a much heavier load when you consider that.
Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, so another cut that we made was to the timer. This was like one of the last things we cut because we really liked the concept of it, but it had to be done. And overall, the game was better for it, I think. Luckily for us, the only dream that was like based around the timer was Grimp's. And so you can see here on the left, the way it worked originally is as the timer progresses, the apple level, the little pile of apples, goes up, even while you're not in the dream. So this is an always running cycle. And so the idea for this one is you have to enter the dream at different times in the timer cycle to access different parts of it. And so, like, to get to the power up, you have to go in really, really early and race down to get the power up, and then race over to get the key. And then to get like the very top block to like the position it needs to be to mark, you have to wait until like a minute is left and then race in and get it over to the thing before the timer runs out. So, that's how it used to work. We were able to, because of how simple it was to cut out timer mode, like the timer, I was able to basically just make it a toggle and leave it in as the timer mode, which I don't know if anyone tried yet. But if you want to see like how Grimp's puzzle works within that mode, you can just try it in the mode. It still works this way if you select timer mode. And of course, the way I changed it was to add the buttons that let you manually rise and lower the apple dream, which honestly probably works a little bit better anyway, because it lets you kind of solve a couple puzzles at a time within the dream, instead of having to you basically just get like one solve per loop in the timer mode version, which makes it, again, kind of time consuming. And so with all those cuts out and the timer gone, so you never have to redo anything, we were able to basically cut the game time down to like half, which worked out, which is like about the best we could hope for. Kyle still didn't quite finish it, but he got extremely close. I think he was like 2 keys away from finishing it. So we were pretty happy with that, I think. Right. So the other fix was to tutorialize. A lot of the play testers had a hard time understanding the puzzle mechanics, especially like the difference between marking an object and how objects are linked between dreams. A lot of players thought that marking an object would make it appear in all the dreams, or like to make it, they would have to mark something to make it move, or they didn't understand how marking worked with a timer reset thing. And so I decided to, I don't know if there's an actual word for it, but I call it to hard tutorialize the first dream, which is where like you remove all the player's ability to do the thing except for the thing they have to do. So like I remove the ability to leave the dream until you're told to. Like when you have to mark the plant, you can't mark anything else except that plant. Like when you're told to leave the dream, you can't move anywhere else. You have to just leave. Yeah. Okay, about the time. Well, I'll move on. And then I added like this little log for info because players weren't sure like what dreams to go to or like what was in each dream. And so I added a little log of like the things you've collected and where each thing is. So you're like, oh, I need like an ability. What dreams have an ability? Maybe I can go check this little log, which Kyle didn't even use. He did a very good job with the game.
Yeah, I guess it was a huge relief seeing Kyle figure out the game. I think he presented it really well. I was kind of worried about that, but so it was painful. We built a game, and then I feel like we spent more time tearing that game down a bit into something that definitely was better. But it was very stressful after the first couple of play tests. Seeing those things that we were dreaming of have just not working out was rough, but I think we're all very happy with how things came together.
Yeah, so I think this is definitely, as a team, our most ambitious game in terms of like all the working parts, the design of the game and the art and the music all working like in tandem with each other. So I'm really happy with how it turned out, for sure.
I do want to mention that I think another kind of problem with so we mentioned before, the game had to basically be fully built before we could have a playtest, unless you did it in segments. But also the different art styles was such a big deal in helping people not get distracted or confused, and really selling the idea. So early on, I think kind of as a joke, we were talking about having smooth transitions in the music, and then Lance Lake came over to my place. We all we live pretty close, so we just kind of did this in one night. Go ahead and play the video.
Okay.
So on the bottom, it's a little hard to see, but we have the levels for the volume of the music. And then on the right, you can see these green zones. When you enter them, we fade the music over. And then when you actually enter the dream, we fully transition 0 on one, 1 on the other. So the tricky bit about this for us was, you enter a dream, you walk into Agni, it smooths into Agni, you enter Agni, it goes to 100% Agni. Then you leave Agni, because you can leave at any point. What if you enter Keener? What if you enter Keener? We need to make sure we smoothly blend from Agni to Keener, not Agni to, we call it the trash song, the main theme, then into Keener. So in the bottom, we have these music zones everywhere in every single dream. And when you transition the dream, we just say, okay, we're in this zone, so we can transition to the correct song. And I think it came together really well. I think we were thinking about Banjo-Kazooie does that, right? You get close to a new level and it slowly fades in.
Yeah, it does do that.
That little song. Yeah, that's kind of what we were going for.
Yeah, I think Lance Lake did some of his best work this year.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to even mention that he he took that idea and he was like, okay, we barely even talked about it. He was just like, I'm gonna make them all the same length and the same tempo. And I think it's really fun actually to find the points in the songs where they transition very cool. I think the second one I did with Agni, the transition there is very cool, but it's just kind of serendipitous when they happen.
All right, yeah. So for the last thing, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of Handstandish's art because a lot of the sprites are really small in our game, so maybe it's hard to see them sometimes. So here's some close-ups of some of Pastoriche's animations. I think one of the things he tried to do was that Pastoriche's head never moves or changes expression in any of his animations. It's always like a static face, which is fun. So these are great. And then this is something that maybe not everybody noticed. So to sort of my idea to sort of push the mechanic that you can't move objects that are linked from a different dream. So if you're in Gretchen's dream and there's an object from Grimp's dream, you can't move that until you have to go into Grimp's dream to move it. And so Pastoriche's little like push animation has an effect that matches the art style of the dream he's in. And that the idea was that would like make a reason why he can't push other stuff. He can only push things that match his push effect. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that as well. Everybody drew a little effect for his push. And just some more little close-ups of some art that was used. Got some more of the watercolor art and all the little boxes you push, some of the pixel art. These ones are the things that I built the stages out of, and just some stuff like that. Just to highlight all the hard work that went into making the art for this game. And that's it. Thank you guys so much. Maybe we probably went over time, so if we don't have time for questions, that's all right.
Time, but your last presentation, so you can field a few questions.
Yeah.
You're welcome,
The
completely.
game made me feel smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. We do our best to uplift our community.
It's also very nice because halfway through making it, the game made me feel really dumb. So it really balanced out.
Yeah. How did you want players to feel in general? Yeah, I mean, smart for sure. Of course, it's a puzzle game, so you kind of want those like aha moments of someone going into a dream, being like, "I need this block in that place, so I wonder where I get that block," and then they get to go to another dream and see, "Oh, there's that block I need," and then they get sort of like a little bit of a delayed satisfaction because they have to move it and then go back to the dream. And then they get the satisfaction of like, oh yeah, I put it in the right place. I think that's a pretty cool feeling. Do you have a different answer to that, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking like back when we had the timer, I think I mentioned that, we were kind of thinking about people routing. But I just enjoy when I'm watching somebody play and I can see them recognize how the dreams will affect each other. I think is very satisfying. So yeah, definitely on my end, spatial reasoning and feeling smart. Definitely.
Yeah. Favorite part of working with the game? For me this year, it might have been kind of like the management side of getting everyone on the same page of all the art that needed to be done and like the way the music needed to be done and all the moving parts. Which maybe doesn't sound like the fun part of a game. But it was cool to have like all these people working in tandem, and seeing it all come together. The last couple days where all the art came in and all the music came in and it was all getting added to the game, was just a really, really cool feeling. Like it all like finally fit together in those last couple days, and that was my favorite moment, especially because it came after like 3 days of absolute hell cutting the game to pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, the first couple play tests after that, I was so relieved that we hadn't ruined our game by cutting stuff. We had made it better.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
All right.
guys. Thank you so very much.
Yeah,
That's real
thank
cool.
Thanks.
Boop. All right, you can kick us off whenever you feel like it.
I don't have the ability. You got to kick yourselves off.
Oh, all right.
We just
I will leave gracefully then.
Yeah, there we go. Well, all right, everyone. That concludes the 2025 Robot Party Jam Post-Mortems. A huge thank you to the mods who showed up, who helped out. The huge thank you to everyone who just in the audience, just watching. And an even larger shout out to everyone who gave presentations. I live for the Game Jam, and I live just a little bit longer to hear everyone talk about their games and getting the insights that would have otherwise gone into the ether. You're very welcome for hosting. So anyway, killing all those. Okay, compliments. All right, so let's wrap things up. Everyone have a good night. Thanks for showing up, and we will be back here next year for even more games. And this video, once I edit it, will be up on YouTube, and we'll post about that. Right. So, hey, have a good night and happy gaming.